I grew up in Australia, in a fairly rural area, on a cow farm. My favourite memories of being on the farm was spending time with my father on Saturday mornings. I had two younger brothers who were both asthmatics, so they didn't spend time out on the farm, which made spending time with my dad more special to me. That was the only one-on-one time that I got to spend with him.
Andrew Facey, Brooklyn's father, is a wealthy fourth-generation real estate developer in Melbourne.
When I was a kid, I thought my dad was a superhero. He took over his father's real estate business when he was 18 years old, and he expanded the business very significantly.
Brooklyn's mother is a beautiful socialite.
I had a very difficult relationship with my mother. There was the expectation that I was going to be as thin and as beautiful as what she was. And it didn't seem to matter what I did. It was never good enough for her. And it's caused a significant amount of trauma in my life.
Brooklyn wants to follow in her father's footsteps one day, but here too, she meets with rejection.
My intention was to take over the family business, but my father is somewhat old school in that he likes to keep the men in the business and the women at home.
Her dad does agree to support her financially, and Brooklyn sets her sights on college. But then, disaster strikes.
When I was 18 years old, I had a head-on collision with a truck. I had a closed head injury, my face and jaw was smashed, and I have since had 54 orthopedic surgeries to rebuild my body. I spent most of the year either in a wheelchair or on crutches, but I managed to get through that year at college.
Brooklyn eventually finishes her degree, but rethinks her future.
I couldn't spend time standing and on my feet all day, which is what's required if you're in real estate. One of the things that interested me was esthetician. So I did a course in that, and then I opened my own business in a gym in Melbourne. I met my first husband at the gym after one of the surgeries. After my car accident, I felt like I had been smashed into pieces, and I felt that nobody was going to want me. So as soon as somebody did come along that appeared interested in me, I feel like I kind of latched onto that.
The couple marry in 1996 when Brooklyn is 27, and she gives birth to her first son a year later.
By the time I was pregnant with my second son, I was working and I had a toddler, and my patience with my husband was really just running low. I said to him, "You're going to have to go because you're not pulling your weight."
After 5 years of marriage, Brooklyn takes full custody of her sons with minimal resistance from her ex. A year later, she's ready to dip her toes back into the dating pool.
For anyone who's been a single mother, it's an exhausting gig. And I hoped that I would find someone who would come in and be a part of the family and contribute to that. So I signed up for an Australian dating online service.
She met Paul Carter on RSVP, the online dating site. He came across to her as very available. He was single, unmarried, without children, and looking for love.
So the next night I went on my first date with Paul Carter. And that was a date with destiny, to say the least. Paul showed up in a bright yellow sports car, and that epitomized Paul's personality. He was flashy, he was showy. We went out for dinner and we laughed and talked and got on great, and he was just very easy to talk to, and we just kind of clicked. He has a big personality and he is an amusing person to spend time with.
Paul is ambitious and has his sights set on a bright financial future as a real estate developer and independent business owner.
I needed a man that was going to step up, somebody that had the sort of alpha male qualities that my dad had. That's how Paul came across initially. We got romantically involved pretty quickly from that point. I had come from being married to somebody who was really not physically interested in me at all. And here was this guy, he was very sexual and a great lover. And I appealed to him. That made me feel great.
Eventually, Brooklyn introduces her sons to Paul.
My middle son was about 18 months old, and my eldest son was about 4. And he got along great with them, and he was happy to play with them and spend time with them, and so they thought he was great.
For 6 months, the four are spending all of their weekend time together. Eventually, work intervenes, and Paul says he has to focus on some business matters.
He says that he can't see me this weekend. Okay, that's fine, no problem. I thought it was because he was trying to get stuff done. I ended up going to the South Melbourne market. And I'm wandering around the market and I look up and here's Paul walking towards me hand in hand with a girl that I had no idea who she was. And he couldn't get her to let go of his hand fast enough. And I said to him, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Oh, I'm just showing so-and-so around Melbourne. She's here visiting from Canada." And I couldn't even think at that point. Like, I couldn't think of anything to say. I was left standing there like an idiot, in shock. And when I finally got to ask him about it, his explanation was, "Oh, I was holding her hand because she was scared." She was scared. He claims that she just showed up unannounced. Nobody flies from Canada to Australia on a whim. I'm not somebody that strings people out or plays games, so I wasn't at that time familiar with being played the way that he was playing me. I started to get suspicious. I couldn't understand why I was never invited to his place. So one day when he was in the shower, I pulled his driver's license from his wallet and got his address. His name on his driver's license was Paul Carter, but the address didn't really fit with the narrative that he was putting up about being this super successful guy and having all these designer brands and this flashy car. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go pay a visit and see what's going on at this house. I pull up to the house and I knocked on the door, and this older man, Paul's dad, answered the door. And I said, "Is Paul Carter here?" And he said, "Do you mean Paul Cristallo?" And I said, "No, Paul Carter. This is his address." He said, "Well, Paul Cristallo lives here with his wife, Sonia, and he has 3 kids from his previous marriage." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was surreal. I have 2 little boys who are becoming quite attached to him. And there was a sideboard just inside the door and it had all these photos from their wedding, the pictures of the kids, pictures of his wife. And I felt like the ground was going to open up and swallow me.
Brooklyn Facey is reeling from the news that her new boyfriend, Paul Carter, is not the successful single man he claims to be. In fact, he's married with kids.
This was his second marriage that he was in. At that point, the first marriage, he had 3 kids. And he has a different last name. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if anything about him is real.
Brooklyn decides to confront Paul, who simply shrugs it off.
He says, Yes, I'm married, but we're separated and we're just living in the house together. It didn't sound unrealistic. I thought, this guy's got a lot of potential. He was an exciting person. He's not boring like my last husband was. In hindsight, I should have just stuck with boring.
After the painful confrontation, Paul divorces his second wife and moves into an apartment. And soon, the deception is in the rearview as he plays dad to a blended family with Brooklyn.
He had 3 young children. I had 2 young children. Their ages sort of meshed together. Every other weekend, we had all 5 of them. I loved having the kids there. It was a lot of work for sure, but my boys were happy to have playmates. Thought Paul was pretty good with helping with things around the house, and he was involved in everything that they were doing. So we had a pretty good team situation going on. It meant a great deal to me because I was looking for a partner.
In March 2003, 8 months after first meeting Paul, he surprises Brooklyn with a grand gesture.
Paul proposed to me at the beach. He got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I was thrilled. I was so excited. He convinced me that the life that we were going to have together was going to be wonderful. I didn't really get a sense that my parents didn't like him until I said to them that we were getting married, and they were not in favor of the idea. Right from the get-go, my father thought Paul was sketchy and he couldn't put his finger on it. But, you know, I was an adult. I was in my 30s by that stage, and I was going to do what I was going to do. So we got married on St Kilda Beach in Melbourne. My father came to the wedding. My mother did not come to the wedding. We had all the kids there, all dressed up in black pants and white shirts, and it was so beautiful. And everything seemed so perfect that day. I finally felt like I had the family that I had not had for my whole life. And I was the mother in the family, and I was never going to let my kids feel lonely or sad or unloved. Just thought that was the beginning of the happily ever after. So after we got married, the first couple of years were kind of rough. I was dealing with chronic pain from my car accident, but I felt like Paul had my back. I felt like he was there for me. For the most part, he seemed to be on my team.
The couple doesn't have to worry about money. Brooklyn may be cut out of running the family business, but her dad is still supportive. They move into a bigger house, and when she starts feeling healthier, they take another big step.
We decided to have a child together, and we had Mac, who is the love of my life, and he is my heart and soul.
After Mac's birth, Brooklyn and Paul buy an outdoor equipment company to run as a family business.
I was hoping that it would be something that we could work together in, and then there would be like a legacy for our kids. I was working there part-time, and I was doing the books, and Paul was selling the items, and he was very creative with his marketing, and he would start selling things on eBay. My dad injected a very significant amount of money so we could try and, make a go of it. He was trying to protect me financially, and he wanted to help Paul create something that was going to be good for us.
But after 18 months, they don't have enough cash flow to replenish their stock.
Paul was spending more money than he was bringing in. It wasn't until he was working for something that I was involved in that I got a glimpse of his poor business practices. And my dad basically bailed us out of it. So once we lost the company, my dad then had that over me. And I was going to hear about that forever and a day, that he had saved me and that otherwise we would have been bankrupt. Paul really did a good job of putting a wedge between us.
In 2010, Paul was appointed the CEO of United Housing Victoria, which is a publicly funded community housing company, and there he ran big sort of multi-million-dollar construction jobs.
The organization provides housing for low-income families.
He manages to pull this great job with United Housing, a very secure job, paying very well, and I'm thinking, great, everything's back on track now. I had no idea that he was doing anything wrong at the time.
He was let go after 2 years because they saw they were just hemorrhaging money. The suspicion was that Paul was blowing out the contracts of these construction jobs and pocketing that money.
Brooklyn and Paul have huge mortgage payments for the house they own together, and their debts are mounting because of Paul's excessive spending.
I was panic-stricken, and Paul's way of placating me was to say, I'll just pick up extra jobs on the side. We were in a bad place in our marriage. We ended up having to sell the house. My dad was furious. He was telling me that Paul doesn't know what he's doing. I was humiliated, totally humiliated. The fact that Paul was so irresponsible with money was another reason that my dad felt that he was not a good influence on the boys and that they would be better off with their biological father. He was putting pressure on my ex-husband. My father said to him, I will pay for your lawyers and I will put the kids through school. They took me to court and they filed for custody of my sons.
The custody battle continues for 3 years.
I had run out of money for lawyers. I had no chance of winning. No chance.
Finally, in 2013, Brooklyn loses custody of her 2 oldest sons, who are now 12 and 15. Perhaps influenced by their grandfather, they choose to side with their father.
So my ex-husband, he allowed my father to do this, and he really hasn't worked a day since then. There's only one thing that I really take pride in, and that is that I think I'm a good mum. And for me to lose my kids like that was just so devastating. If it wasn't for Mac, it would have been the end of me.
But for Brooklyn, these losses are just the beginning. Brooklyn Carter is staggering from the heartbreaking loss of her custody battle.
My family, I have no connection with because they've all taken my dad's side. I've lost 2 of my sons, so all I have left is my youngest son and my husband. It would have been easier for me if I had died that day. Everything that I had tried to keep safe and everything that mattered to me had just been handed over to someone else. And I just hope that when my boys are older, they realize that I never, ever stopped loving them. For a long time, I was so focused on the court battle with my kids that I was not paying attention to my husband. He felt that he was missing out on time and energy that I should have been putting into him. He was going to motocross meetings and joining motocross clubs. He was buying cars and changing cars frequently.
Paul would use Brooklyn to subsidise his lifestyle, things like fast cars, properties, credit cards.
There was constant stress in the house. Bills needed to be paid.
Brooklyn has managed to protect a portion of her nest egg from Paul's spending, but she's concerned he might eventually drain all of her money.
I really didn't have a lot of options other than to take back control myself. And my version of that was to take my money and put it somewhere else where Paul couldn't touch it, and I knew it would be safe. So we got an E2 treaty visa, which is granted to Australians who invest into a business in the United States. We had been to Boston to visit, and I loved it there. So I bought a couple of houses and rented them out.
Coincidentally, just as Brooklyn ties up her finances with offshore real estate and her money is out of his reach, Paul comes into a windfall.
On my son Mac's 5th birthday, we were having a party at our house for him, and Paul announced to me that he had inherited a large plot of land from his grandmother, and the government were trying to buy that land because they wanted to put a highway through.
Paul explains that this land is in Italy, and the sale is slightly delayed by red tape.
He showed me some documentation, and it all looked very bona fide to me, which was incredibly exciting because he was telling me that it was worth tens of millions of dollars. And that's one of the things about Paul. He always bounces back, often bigger and better than he was before.
Brooklyn feels hope for the first time since losing custody of her oldest sons. But she's worried how their absence is affecting Mac, her youngest.
It was very difficult for my youngest son to come home every night and not have his brothers there and go to the same school and not see his brothers.
Brooklyn suggests to Paul that they move to Boston.
By this stage, he was working for himself as a builder, and he had various projects underway. He said, okay, great, we'll buy houses, renovate them and flip them and start a new life.
Brooklyn and Mac head to Boston in April of 2014.
I was still devastated about my sons, but it was easier to try and move forward when I wasn't faced with the same things every day that reminded me of them. So Mac and I are in Boston. He was happy, I was happy, and we were expecting that Paul would join us within 2, maybe 3 months. Then suddenly the communication starts to dwindle and he's not calling every day. He didn't contact me for my birthday. It didn't take long for me to question him about what was going on. So he says to me, I would finish these jobs a lot quicker if you can fund them, and then once I finish them, I'll get the final payment and then I'll repay you.
Brooklyn knows that lending money to Paul is a risk, but after 11 years of marriage, she doesn't want to give up on him.
I don't like quitters, and I don't like to quit on things myself. I'm going to stick with something until the very end. So I went ahead and gave him the money.
It won't be long before Brooklyn discovers the real purpose of the money.
It was the middle of the night, and I was woken up by Mac, who was then 8 years old, who had his iPad in his hand. So he hands me his iPad and says, who is this lady in the picture with Dad? Somebody had sent him a Facebook notification. Hang on, is this an old picture of Paul? This is my husband, but I've got no idea who this woman is. Paul's wearing a black tie suit, and this blonde woman is wearing what looks like a ball gown. I had no idea when the photo was taken, who this woman was, what Paul was doing there, or what the event was. I felt sick. I felt like my whole life was spinning out of control.
Brooklyn Carter is mortified to discover pictures of her husband in the very close company of another woman.
I'm realizing that this is not an old photo from some time before my time with Paul. This is something that's going on now that shouldn't be going on.
It doesn't take long to figure out that the event is an engagement party, and the lady in red is Paul's new fiancée.
Catherine Dubois was a Melbourne woman. She was a bit of a socialite, had great friends, but love was missing, and so she went online to find that. Catherine met Paul on Tinder. Paul rocked up to that date driving a Maserati and claimed he owned a big fleet of them. He claimed to be a self-made millionaire with this big property empire across Melbourne and Queensland.
The courtship begins after Brooklyn leaves for Boston.
Catherine said it was something of a whirlwind romance. He was extremely kind, he paid a lot of attention to her, and came across as extremely committed. She decided to move in with him, and to her shock, he lived in this basic townhouse in Box Hill, which is certainly not where you'd think a multimillionaire lives. Paul had an explanation, and that was that this was a temporary place that he was living while he and his ex-partner had been building this dream home. He actually told her his ex-wife had passed away with brain cancer, so she stopped asking questions. It was about 12 weeks into their love story. Paul got down on one knee and asked Catherine to marry him, and it was an easy yes for her. Catherine owned a beauty bar just outside of Melbourne, and it was to be acquired by the government to make way for a major road project. Catherine said that Paul really convinced her that he was something of an acquisitions expert, and so she was quick to transfer him power of attorney.
With Brooklyn conveniently tucked away in Boston, Paul Carter feels confident that he's safe to openly celebrate his new love. But he fails to consider the massive reach of social media.
After several months of me questioning whether he was having an affair or he was becoming more and more distant, I finally had the proof. So I called him and I said to him, "What the hell is this? What is going on?" He said that he would come over to Boston, and in the meantime we were doing counselling over the phone and trying to figure out if this was at all salvageable.
In Australia, Catherine Dubois receives a very similar shock.
After Catherine and Paul's engagement party, she receives a call from somebody who knows Paul. And they tell her, he has a wife and child in the US. You need to end this. Catherine now believes that he was trying to take over the beauty salon that she'd transferred into his name.
Paul and Catherine break off their relationship, and in November 2014, Paul heads off to Boston and attempts to patch up his relationship with Brooklyn.
He was able to convince me that he was remorseful for what he had done. I'd already been through a divorce and lost my kids. I wasn't going to risk doing that again and losing my youngest son. So I was going to do whatever I had to do to make it work. I still felt like I could pull out the defibrillator once again and restart the heart and try and get things back on track.
On a romantic trip to New York City for Brooklyn's 46th birthday, Paul tells her he wants to renew his commitment to her.
We had a lovely weekend in New York City, and he had organised with a jeweller to look at some diamonds because he was going to get a ring made for me.
But within weeks, it becomes clear she'll never get that diamond ring.
The money hasn't been transferred to the jeweller. No money has come into our accounts. I had faced about as much humiliation as I could take at this point. I was really losing faith in Paul. But I want to be able to say to my kids that I gave it my best shot. I didn't just quit because it got too hard. I just wasn't prepared to lose all that money and then find out a couple of weeks later that he inherited tens of millions of dollars from his grandmother.
Paul has one more gambit to keep Brooklyn happy.
Early 2018, we took over a lease on a horse farm that we were to purchase. We had scheduled the closing to coincide with plenty of time for the money to come from overseas.
Paul spent many years convincing Brooklyn that he was to inherit, and every time this deal was due to close, there was always an excuse as to why it wasn't happening. He would go to extreme lengths to keep up the con. fake contracts written in Italian would be delivered to her door, and another time that she'd receive calls from a fake number explaining to her why this was being delayed.
With the final payment on the farm looming, Brooklyn puts pressure on Paul for some financial relief. And this turns into his breaking point.
Paul came home and said, there's no inheritance. There isn't any money coming, there's no money. I slid down the fridge and onto the floor like a cartoon character. The whole game was up.
Furious and deeply betrayed, Brooklyn kicks Paul out.
I was now left with this farm that I had to pay for. I enlisted the support of my dad to help figure out the financial part of it until I was able to sell my house and repay him. Fortunately for me, my father made me sign a prenup with Paul, so I didn't end up having to split our assets. Finally, I had control of my life back again from Paul Carter. Or so I thought.
Paul, cut off from his slush fund, is angry and desperate.
Paul shows up to the farm. He was really angry. And he says to me, I'm going to kill myself, but I'm going to make sure I take you down with me. And I just felt chills go down my spine.
Brooklyn Carter is finally coming clean with herself about who her husband really is, and she's terrified.
He was not in control of money, property, our child, nothing. The gravy train had well and truly stopped, and it just enraged him. I went out and bought myself a rifle. My son was sleeping with a baseball bat next to his bed. I was terrified of what might happen.
Brooklyn gets a restraining order, and then finally, after 16 years of marriage, she files for divorce.
I couldn't lose any more money, I couldn't lose any more sleep, I couldn't be any more miserable. I thought, if I don't do something now, I'm not even going to have the energy to get out of this marriage.
In August 2019, the divorce becomes final, and Brooklyn gets full custody of Mac.
I couldn't hold back my emotion, and I burst into tears, and my head fell onto the desk in the courtroom.
But there is just one problem.
I became increasingly concerned about being on the same visa as Paul Carter. I decided I needed to get Mac and I a new visa. My very close friend suggested that we get married because we both had no intentions of ever remarrying in our lives.
Brooklyn and her female friend hold a garden wedding in Albany in September 2019.
She was going to come and live at the house that I had built at my farm, and we were just going to grow old together and help each other out and be companions for each other.
Before the couple can even move in together, Brooklyn's life takes an unforeseen turn.
I get a call from 60 Minutes Australia.
He may look like an ordinary bloke, but this is one of Australia's most cunning con men, a ruthless operator who's fleeced millions from family, friends, the rich and the poor.
60 Minutes seemed to have even more information about things that he had done that I had no clue about.
We gave him the moniker the Casanova con man because his biggest cons were of women he made believe that he loved them.
Paul Carter.
They tracked him down at a job site, which was a very rewarding moment to see because they made him come down off the roof and it was just perfect.
Why would you tell Catherine that your partner had died of brain
cancer? Yeah, that was a mistake. I was going through a bad time with my then wife and it was just a mistake.
They knew about the Uniting Church fiasco and they just had facts and figures and numbers on different projects that he was doing. He hadn't had time to prepare any answers, but he still denied everything.
So I keep hearing this, but I don't know who you're talking about.
He's just deny.
What about the Italian inheritance that didn't exist?
There isn't one.
Was that another mistake?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
After the expose, Paul Carter becomes the subject of a Homeland Security investigation.
He had engaged in these fraud schemes for many years with almost no law enforcement intervention. We were able to determine that he had used multiple identities. At that time, his most recent name is Paul Hamilton. We execute a search warrant at his residence. We found a law diploma under the name of Paul Hamilton. We found a document that was fraudulent from the Department of Homeland Security indicating that he had been awarded United States citizenship. We found military uniforms in his closet. We found a document indicating that he was the beneficiary of over $30 million in trust funds. All of these items were in line with what the underlying allegations were about him. We immediately arrested Paul Carter. So we took him into custody on the felony charges of visa fraud and false statements.
This should have been the end of Brooklyn's nightmare with Paul, except that her marriage to him has put her under the microscope of Homeland Security as well.
A couple of months later, it was about 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and there's a knock on the door. Brooklyn, we need you to open the door. It's Homeland Security.
The execution of the search warrant at Brooklyn's house was specifically in regard to the allegations of marriage fraud against her.
They're bashing on the door. Open the door, Brooklyn. So I opened the door, and 8 agents in bulletproof vests with guns stormed through my door and up the stairs. They took all our cell phones and computers, took my son's gaming computer, everything that they could get their hands on, and sent it to Quantico to get analysed.
Brooklyn is suspected of committing marriage fraud with her wife in order to gain a green card.
I was not prepared to drag her or her family through the mud with the government. This was supposed to be a happy situation for both of us.
Brooklyn divorces her wife in June 2020.
They never charged me with marriage fraud, but it was enough for them to then look at the ESTA form that I'd filled in and decide, oh, well, that's not right either. There was a felony charge for filling in the ESTA while I was still in the United States.
Brooklyn Carter ultimately pled guilty to making false statements on the ESTA application, which is utilized to re-enter the United States at some point.
Paul Carter also faces his day of reckoning in a federal court, and despite the many allegations, he too is charged with visa fraud on April 7th, 2021, and held in an Albany jail.
Paul Carter was sentenced to time served and a $5,000 fine. We were not, as an agency, pleased with the sentence, but he's now a convicted felon, which in part is based on the work that our agency and our office did.
His deportation hearing has been delayed, and now he has moved to the other side of the country and applied for a green card. So it seems that he's bought himself another couple of years of stalling techniques.
I think based on his history, it's likely that he'll come back around. I'd be surprised if we haven't heard the last of Paul Carter.
Meanwhile, because of Brooklyn's conviction, she must leave the United States. A huge disappointment, but there is a silver lining. A man named Sean Donahue.
I heard that she had to leave the country, and I said, I'm gonna marry you, and I'm gonna get your son away from Paul. And if he'll have me and you'll allow it, I'm going to adopt him and make him a Donahue.
I can't overstate how wonderful he has been to Mac and I. He's the happy ending that we deserve. I've brought chaos to this man's life, and he's still there standing right beside me. And I believe he will be till our dying days.
We're happy as can be now. We are not going to let anybody shatter our marriage. And I'll be with Brooklyn as soon as I can in another country at the soonest available time.
I've been dragged through the gates of hell to get to the happy ending. I've come out the other end. It's going to make a good story for my grandchildren, that's for sure.
It begins with a scream no one heard. A quiet town, a single road, the sound of cicadas rising in the humid air of a Texas night, March 14th, 1998. The kind of night where nothing ever happens until it does. The streetlights flickered on Main Street, the diner closed early, and somewhere beyond the tree line, a girl vanished. Her name was Rachel Monroe, 17, bright, restless, last seen leaving her part-time shift at Miller's gas station just before midnight. She was supposed to drive home. She never made it. The next morning, her car was found on County Road 7. Doors unlocked, keys in the ignition, headlights still on, one shoe lying in the dust. Inside the car, her purse, untouched. Her phone, a flip model, sat on the seat, battery dead. But no sign of Rachel. Not a struggle, not a trace. Just silence and the smell of gasoline in the warm dawn. The sheriff called it strange. The locals called it cursed. The investigation started the way they all do. Canvassing, flyers, interviews. Her coworkers said she'd been acting nervous. Her best friend claimed Rachel had mentioned a man in a blue truck who kept coming by late at night, asking for cigarettes and small talk. Nobody remembered a plate number. Nobody could describe his face. Only that he had a voice too calm for the questions he asked. Days turned into weeks. The case caught fire in the media. Teen missing in small Texas town. A local anchor read the story with that sharp, rehearsed sympathy. But the cameras left as fast as they came. Search parties walked miles through ranch fields and creek beds. Dogs picked up a scent once, lost it near an abandoned barn 3 miles from the gas station. No footprints, no blood. Nothing but old beer cans and the remains of a campfire long cold. Then the rumors started. A shadow on the road, headlights seen where there shouldn't be any. A woman swore she saw Rachel at a gas station in Oklahoma, dazed, asking for directions. The lead went nowhere. Police logs filled with dead ends. Detectives rotated in and out. And by the end of that summer, the file was labeled inactive. But in small towns, time doesn't bury secrets. It preserves them. Every diner conversation circled back to Rachel. Every new deputy was warned about the girl who disappeared. And every family in that county kept their daughters a little closer. For 20 years, the case sat in a locked cabinet at the sheriff's office. Dust collected on the photos, her face smiling, frozen forever at 17. Then came the storm. September 2021, a new sheriff, younger, restless, hungry to prove himself, he reopened the Monroe file. Technology had changed. DNA databases were larger, and there was one item never fully tested. The fabric from the driver's seat of Rachel's car, preserved in evidence. It had a faint reddish stain that early labs couldn't process in '98. Now with new extraction methods, they could. The lab results came back 2 weeks later. The blood wasn't Rachel's. It belonged to an unidentified male, a partial profile that hit on a regional database. A man arrested in 2003 for assault in another county. Name Thomas Avery, known drifter mechanic, last seen in Texas in late 1998. No record since. The sheriff's team started digging. Avery's last known address was a trailer lot outside Amarillo, vacant. His file showed a string of petty crimes. Nothing that stood out, but buried in one report, a note. Worked briefly at Miller's gas station, spring 1998. The same place Rachel worked. That connection had never been made before. Detectives tracked down his former boss, an old man now nearly blind. When shown a photo, he hesitated, then said, "Yeah, he was quiet. Always cleaned the pumps after closing. Liked to stay late." The man paused. One night he came in with his arm bleeding. Said he cut it fixing his truck. That was the week Rachel vanished. The sheriff's heart raced. It was something, finally, after decades of nothing. But when they ran his name through federal databases, another surprise emerged. Thomas Avery was declared dead in 2006. Car crash outside New Mexico. Body burned beyond recognition. But the crash report had one detail that didn't sit right. The body was found in a different vehicle. Not Avery's truck, but one reported stolen 2 days earlier. The license plates had been removed. So who died in that crash? The sheriff ordered the crash remains re-examined. The coroner's report from 2006 was thin, basic dental ID, no DNA analysis. When the new forensics came in, the results cracked the old file open like glass. The DNA from the crash victim did not match Thomas Avery. Whoever died in that wreck wasn't him. Avery had vanished again. The story hit local news. Texas cold case reopened after DNA mix-up. Reporters flocked back to the town. Old fears resurfaced. Rachel's mother, now in her 70s, gave a single statement. If he's out there, he's been out there all along. Soon after, more evidence surfaced. A former truck stop waitress came forward, saying she remembered a man matching Avery's description stopping by in early 1999. He had a scar on his arm, she said. He always paid in cash. He'd stare at the road like he was waiting for someone who never came. Detectives followed the trail. A chain of faded receipts, motel check-ins, security footage too grainy to confirm. Then one night, a call came in from a retired state trooper. He'd been on the force back in '98. I pulled over a blue pickup near County Road 7 around 1 a.m., he said. Guy said he was lost. I ran the plates. Clean. Didn't think twice. He paused. When I heard about that girl missing, I knew I'd seen something. But the department told us to back off, said it was handled. Handled by who? No record of that traffic stop existed. No report, no ticket, nothing. It was as if someone had erased it. The sheriff dug deeper into the old department logs and discovered half a dozen missing entries from that same week in March 1998. The files had been altered, names blacked out. Someone inside the department had buried evidence. The tension in the office grew. Officers whispered that Avery had connections, maybe with someone in law enforcement, a mechanic who fixed patrol cars, who knew which cops worked the night shift, which ones drank after hours. Someone invisible but always nearby. Meanwhile, the DNA trace continued. A new sample pulled from the blood matched not just Avery, but a second person, a familial match, suggesting a relative. Investigators found a brother, Daniel Avery, living under a different name in Arkansas. When questioned, Daniel denied contact. I don't know where he is, he said. Haven't since '98. But when shown Rachel's photo, his eyes dropped. He liked her, he muttered. Said she reminded him of someone. Forensic teams returned to the original scene, County Road 7. They dug along the roadside where the car was found using ground-penetrating radar. And there, beneath layers of red Texas clay, they uncovered something small, a bracelet, bent, half-buried, engraved with the initials RM. It wasn't on the original evidence list. Someone had missed it or ignored it. It was Rachel's, confirmed by her mother. The find reignited everything. Local news turned national. 1998, Texas cold case breaks wide open. A reporter stood by the dusty road, voice trembling in the evening wind, saying this might finally lead to justice after 23 years. But behind the headlines, the story took a darker turn. 2 days after the discovery, the sheriff's office was broken into. Nothing stolen, except one thing. The evidence envelope containing the bracelet. Security footage showed a masked figure, lean, wearing gloves, moving like they knew exactly where to go. The footage cut out halfway through. The hard drive was wiped. Within a week, the same blue pickup was reported again. Old, rusted matching Avery's, seen parked outside a closed diner 20 miles from town. By the time deputies arrived, it was gone. Only tire tracks in the dirt and a half-smoked cigarette still warm on the ground. And then came the letter. No return address, postmarked from Albuquerque. Inside, a single Polaroid. The picture showed a dirt road, a pair of headlights in the distance, and a caption written in shaky ink. You stopped looking too soon. The sheriff stared at it for hours. The handwriting matched no known sample, but the type of film, Kodak Instant, hadn't been produced since the late 90s. The photo was old, maybe from the night Rachel disappeared, maybe from whoever took her. The case spiraled into national coverage. Podcasts dissected every clue. Forums lit up with theories. Some said Avery never existed, that he was a cover name used by someone inside the department. Others believed Rachel ran away, that the evidence was planted, but one thing was certain. Someone was still out there, watching, listening. The sheriff received one final anonymous call. The voice was raspy, distorted. She's closer than you think, it said. But if you find her, you'll wish you hadn't. Then the line went dead. The investigation froze again. Tension coiled tight. Detectives reviewed every minute of the original case, searching for what they'd missed. A single thread, buried somewhere between 1998 and now. And as the sun set over the empty fields of rural Texas, one truth lingered in the dry wind. Rachel Monroe never came home. But neither did the man who took her. And somewhere beneath that red dirt, the story still waits to be unearthed. Night falls heavy over the town of Miller's Creek the same way it did 23 years ago. The streetlights hum, the neon diner sign flickers, and inside the sheriff's office, a single desk lamp burns through the dark. Sheriff Cole Harlan hasn't slept in 2 days. The photo lies in front of him. That Polaroid, headlights in the distance, the scrawled message beneath. You stopped looking too soon. He's turned it over 100 times, searching for something. A fingerprint, a clue, a whisper from the past. but the photo just stares back, silent, mocking. He replays the timeline again. Rachel leaves work at 11:47 p.m. The camera at the gas station catches her car pulling out. At 11:56, the trooper reports a blue pickup on County Road 7. At 12:03, her headlights vanish. Somewhere in those 16 minutes, the world swallowed her whole. Cole digs deeper into the evidence files. Old cassette interviews, faded Polaroids, handwritten notes from deputies long retired. The writing trembles, ink fading. He finds a page marked confidential, dated March 1998. It's a log entry for a call made from the gas station phone at 11:51 p.m. The recording no longer exists, but the note reads, female voice, distressed, line cut. It was never followed up. He clenches his jaw. Who ignored that? Who let that go? He drives back to the old station, now boarded up and forgotten, weeds crawling through the asphalt. The air smells of oil and rain. He pushes through the warped door, flashlight cutting through the dust, the counter, the pumps, the back office. Untouched since '98. Papers yellowed, calendars still hanging. He walks to the corner where the phone used to be. The cord dangles like a vein torn open. He runs his hand across the wall, finds a groove, a dent, as if someone had slammed it in panic. Outside, thunder rolls. The night feels wrong. Then, a crunch. Footsteps behind him. He spins, light slicing through the dark, but there's nothing. Just the sound of the wind dragging the door closed behind him. He stands there, breath shallow, the same stillness the first responding officers must have felt all those years ago. That sense that something was still here, watching. He drives home past the Monroe property, the porch light's still on, same as always. Mrs. Monroe keeps it burning, a beacon for a daughter who never came back. Cole nods as he passes, the kind of nod that says everything without words. He knows she watches the news every night, waiting for his name, for any sign that this time might be different. Back at the station, the team is waiting. Deputy Ruiz spreads out new prints, tire impressions from the 2021 sighting of the blue pickup. The pattern's rare, discontinued model, Firestone ATX, sold only in the mid-90s, but one dealership in Houston still had records. Only a handful sold in the county. One name overlaps with Avery's employer. Cole feels the spark. The connection tightens. He orders Ruiz to pull every maintenance log from Miller's gas station. When they do, one receipt jumps out. Oil change, March 9, 1998. Customer, T. Avery, blue Ford F-150. The mechanic's signature is smudged, but another name appears faintly on the back of the receipt. Officer Dean Keller. A cop. Keller served under the old sheriff, resigned suddenly in 1999, citing personal reasons, no forwarding address. Cole's stomach twists. He's heard the name. Keller was the trooper who supposedly pulled over the blue pickup that night. He drives out to Keller's last known address, a crumbling house off the highway, now swallowed by mesquite and dust. The windows are broken, the door hangs crooked. Inside, the air's stale. The wallpaper peels in long strips. In the living room, an old CB radio hums faintly, power cord still plugged in. Cole steps closer. There's a note pinned to the wall, in faded ink. You can't run from what you buried. He stands there, the silence thick. Behind him, a floorboard creaks. His hand moves to his sidearm. He turns. Nothing. Just the sound of wind through the hollow frame. They find Keller 3 days later in a nursing home outside Lubbock. Pale, gaunt, lost in the fog of dementia. When shown Rachel's photo, his eyes sharpen for the briefest second, then a whisper. The badge doesn't make you clean. He won't say more. Doctors say his memory flickers like a dying light bulb, but Cole knows. Keller's hiding something. Meanwhile, the evidence theft from the sheriff's office remains unsolved. No fingerprints, no forced entry. Whoever took the bracelet had clearance. Cole starts checking his own staff. He finds something chilling. Deputy Ruiz's key card, used at 2:14 a.m. that night, minutes before the footage was wiped. But Ruiz swears he was home. His alibi checks out, except the timestamp shows the card scanned twice, once entering, once leaving. The second scan logged by a system that wasn't supposed to be online. Someone cloned his access. Cole knows what that means. Inside help, maybe digital, maybe someone who's been following the case long enough to know the system. The FBI joins in. Agents swarm the department, set up a mobile lab, reanalyze the old evidence. They test the envelope that once held the bracelet, trace fibers, particles of clay. The clay matches soil found not at County Road 7, but 40 miles east, near the Red River Basin. Private land, once owned by the Avery family. Cole drives there alone. The property's been abandoned for years. Weeds swallow the path, fences sag. The main barn stands like a skeleton in the dusk. Inside, it smells of rot and engine oil. Chains hang from the rafters. He sweeps his flashlight across the floor, sees a dark stain, old, circular. He kneels, scrapes a sample. It flakes dry, brown, blood once, long ago. He keeps moving. Behind a stack of rusted barrels, he finds a wooden box. Inside, burned photos, half-melted film, and a small silver locket. Inside the locket, a picture of Rachel Monroe. Cole's breath catches. The case isn't cold anymore, it's burning. He sends the locket for prints. The results come back partial, smudged, but one stands out. Female, unknown, not Rachel. Back at the office, a call comes in. A young woman from Oklahoma City claims she's found something. A letter hidden inside a used paperback bought from a thrift store. The letter mentions Miller's Creek, County Road 7, and the line, "She didn't die that night." Cole drives north immediately. The bookstore owner says the book came from a donation box 2 months ago. The letter's yellowed, written in cursive, signed simply T.A. Thomas Avery. But the paper's old, dated 2003, meaning he was alive years after the supposed crash. The letter describes a girl. Lost, scared, kept hidden in the dark. Mentions a cabin by the water, mentions she saw my face when she shouldn't have. Cole reads it twice, heart pounding. If Rachel was alive after that night, where did she go? Who was keeping her? He traces the words cabin by the water through property maps. There's one lake nearby, Lake Meredith. And on the north shore, a collapsed cabin marked Avery property condemned. He drives there before dawn. The air is cold, the wind cutting through the pines. The cabin leans sideways, its roof caved in. Inside, everything's damp, mold crawling up the walls. He steps over fallen beams, then sees it. A small iron hook in the ceiling, rope fibers still clinging to it. On the floor, something glints, a compact mirror, cracked. When he flips it open, initials scratched on the back, RM. He exhales. Every lead pulls him deeper, every discovery darker than the last. He radios the station, voice tight, "Send a full team, and dogs." Then the radio hisses. A burst of static, then a voice he doesn't recognize. "She's still here." He freezes. "Who is this?" Silence. Back at the scene, the team arrives. Forensics confirms the cabin was used years after the disappearance. Burn marks on the walls, blood traces too old to type. But they find one last thing. Beneath a loose floorboard wrapped in wax paper, a Polaroid camera. Inside, undeveloped film. When the film's processed, the image sends a shiver through the entire department. It's Rachel. Alive. Sitting in a chair, bound, her eyes fixed on the camera. Behind her, in the reflection of a cracked mirror, a shadowed figure holding the lens. The timestamp? April 1999, a full year after she vanished. Cole stares at the photo for hours. The room feels colder. Every theory collapses into something new, something worse. She hadn't disappeared into the night. She'd been taken, kept, photographed, and maybe moved again. The town erupts. Reporters flood the streets, helicopters overhead. Rachel Monroe captivity photo discovered. But for Cole, it's not victory, like it's a warning. Whoever took that photo wanted it found. Late that night, he gets another call, blocked number, the same distorted voice as before. "You found her," it says. "Now find me." Then, a click. Cole looks out the window. Across the street, the diner sign flickers, throwing light on an empty parking lot. But in the reflection of the glass, just for a second, he swears he sees a man watching. Tall, still, wearing a mechanic's jacket. When he turns, there's no one there. He draws the blinds, exhales slow. The file on his desk thickens, every page a ghost, every lead a trap. Somewhere between the evidence and the lies, truth is bleeding through. But so is something else. Because as he learns too late, in Miller's Creek, some people don't want the past uncovered. They want it to stay buried. And buried things don't like being found. The sirens had stopped hours ago, but the echo lingered in the night. Miller's Creek felt hollow, a town holding its breath. Sheriff Cole Harlan sat alone in the evidence room, the Polaroid of Rachel Monroe staring up from the table. The girl in the photograph was alive, terrified, but alive. That image had become the only heartbeat left in a case long thought dead. Cole didn't blink. He just listened. To the hum of the lights, the tick of the clock, the faint whisper of something beyond reason that always comes when you stare too long into a ghost. He replayed the distorted voice in his head. "You found her. Now find me." Whoever made that call wasn't hiding. They were inviting him, mocking him. He opened the file again, spread every photo, every scrap, every note across the floor, like a map of madness. There were too many coincidences, too many erased names. Someone inside the system had kept this buried for years, maybe more than one. The old sheriff, the trooper Keller, the mechanic Avery, their lives tangled in the same shadow. Outside, a storm was rolling in from the west. The air buzzed with static. Cole looked out the window. Lightning crawling across the plains. Somewhere in the flash, he thought he saw a figure standing near the edge of the station lot, a man in a dark coat, motionless, watching. When the lightning flashed again, he was gone. The next morning, the FBI lab report came in. The blood from the cabin floor, not Avery's, not Rachel's. Unknown male, early 30s, likely deceased decades ago. Cole's hands trembled. Someone else had died in that cabin. Another victim, maybe. Or a partner silenced. Deputy Ruiz stepped in, voice low. "Sheriff, you need to see this." On his monitor, surveillance footage from a gas station outside Lubbock, dated 3 days ago. A man buying cigarettes and motor oil. Tall, lean, scar on his arm. He pays in cash, looks at the camera for a split second. Eyes sharp, unblinking. The timestamp flickers, 10:43 p.m. The system glitches. When the image clears, the man is gone. License plate unreadable. But the clerk swears he left in a blue pickup. Cole's pulse spikes. Send it to Quantico, enhance everything. He knows it won't matter. The face was too clear, too real. Avery, or whoever was left of him, was back. That night, the sheriff's radio crackled again. Static first, then a woman's voice, faint, trembling. "Help, please." Cole froze. "Identify yourself." No answer, just the sound of breathing, then a whisper. "He's not done." The line cut. He traced the signal. Came from an old relay tower near the Red River Basin, 10 miles from the Avery property. The same soil where the bracelet had been buried. He called for backup. None came fast enough, so he went alone. The road was empty, the kind of dark that eats headlights whole. The wind howled through the open plains. When he reached the tower, he stepped out. Mud, silence, and the smell of rain. The radio crackled again. Faint. Same voice. "You shouldn't be here." Then a sound behind him. A snap, like a branch underfoot. He spun, weapon raised. The beam of his flashlight caught only grass swaying in the storm. He climbed the tower stairs, metal groaning under each step. At the top, a small maintenance shack. Inside, an old two-way radio blinking red, still transmitting. He leaned in. Static hissed, then beneath it, faint music. An old country tune, warped, looping endlessly. The tape deck beside it still spinning, even though the tape had snapped years ago. He backed away slowly, the wind screaming through the steel frame. Then in the dirt below, headlights cut through the darkness. A blue pickup, parked just beyond the fence. The engine idled. Cole's breath caught. He aimed his flashlight, shouting, "Police! Step out of the vehicle!" No movement. The door creaked open on its own. The cab was empty. The engine shut off. Then, from the tower's speaker, the voice came again. Lower now, calm, almost human. "You're late, Sheriff." He ran down the stairs, gun drawn, heart hammering. The truck was gone. Just tire tracks cutting through the mud, leading toward the woods. He followed them until they disappeared into the riverbed. By dawn, the trail was gone. The storm had washed it clean. Back at the station, the FBI liaison looked grim. "Sheriff, we pulled another print from the Polaroid camera." He handed over a file. The print matched someone unexpected. Dean Keller, the retired trooper, the man who said he barely remembered the case. Cole's stomach dropped. Keller had lied. They drove back to the nursing home. His room was empty, bed sheets soaked in sweat, window open, footprints leading to the garden. Keller was gone. The nurse said he'd vanished sometime between midnight and 2. No one saw him leave. But security footage showed something strange. A man in a mechanic's jacket walking down the hall minutes before, the face hidden under a cap. 2 ghosts walking the same corridor. Days turned into chaos. Reporters camped outside the department. Headlines screamed, "Sheriff haunted by his own case." The town split. Half believed Avery was alive. The other half said Cole was losing his mind. But the sheriff didn't care. He stopped going home. He slept in his office, surrounded by maps, evidence, and the low buzz of the scanner. Then came the package. No return address. Inside, an old VHS tape labeled 1999. The tape hissed when played. Static, flicker, then an image. A dark room. A woman sitting against a wall, her hands bound. Rachel Monroe. Eyes wide, lips cracked, whispering something the mic barely caught. "Please, not again." The camera pans slowly. A man's shadow crosses the lens. He says one line, his voice unmistakable. "We finish what we start." Cole slammed his fist against the desk. "Where the hell did this come from?" The mail trace led nowhere. Sent from a P.O. box under a false name. But on the corner of the tape, faintly etched into the plastic, were coordinates. When the team traced them, the signal pointed to a patch of desert near the Texas-New Mexico border. An old oil field, long abandoned. Cole drove out himself. Miles of empty sand stretching under a dead sun. The wind howled through rusted pump jacks, the air heavy with the stench of sulfur and iron. Then he saw it. An old shack at the base of a ridge, door half open, swaying in the wind. He stepped inside, dust thick, air unmoving. On the wall, photos, dozens of them, pinned like trophies. Every missing person from the county between 1997 and 2001. Men, women, children, faces smiling, frozen. And in the center, Rachel Monroe, the same Polaroid from the cabin, but this time with a second figure behind her, Keller. Cole stumbled back. The air left his lungs. It wasn't just Avery. Keller had been there too. He called it in. Backup was en route. Then, behind him, the floor creaked. A voice. "You found it." Keller stepped from the shadows, eyes hollow, uniform gone, a revolver trembling in his hand. He made me do it, he said, voice cracking. He said she'd go free if I helped. His hands shook. But she never left. None of them did. Cole raised his weapon. Where is she, Keller? The old trooper smiled, empty and broken. You're still looking in the wrong place. A single gunshot shattered the silence. Keller dropped, the revolver slipping from his grasp. The echo rolled across the desert. When the dust cleared, a small cassette recorder lay beside him. Cole pressed play. A voice, male, calm, cold. You took too long, Sheriff. Now she's gone again. And then, faintly, the sound of the same old country song that played from the tower. Cole stood there in the burning sun, surrounded by ghosts. The desert swallowed the sound, and the wind whispered through the empty fields. Somewhere out there, the blue pickup was moving again. And for the first time, Cole realized the truth that chilled his blood. This wasn't a cold case reopening. It was one that had never stopped. 'Cause in Texas, the dead don't rest, they drive. And the road never ends. The desert never forgets. It holds secrets the way the ocean holds wrecks. Buried, shifting, waiting for the wind to uncover what men tried to erase. When the sun rose over the ridge that morning, it burned through the sand and smoke, and Sheriff Cole Harlan stood in the middle of it all, the body of Dean Keller at his feet, the taste of gunpowder and dust in his mouth. The old trooper's last words hung in the air like a curse. You're still looking in the wrong place. By noon, the scene was crawling with agents, evidence markers stabbed into the ground like gravestones. The FBI techs moved in silence, cataloging every inch of the shack. Photographs, cassettes, human remains beneath the floorboards, 7 in total. None confirmed as Rachel Monroe, none with names. Cole didn't speak. He just watched, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the horizon where the desert shimmered. Back at the station, chaos. Reporters shouted questions, phones rang nonstop, and the town buzzed like a live wire. Headlines screamed, Keller's secret graveyard discovered. Cold case explodes wide open. But Cole wasn't celebrating. He knew the truth. Keller was just a pawn. Someone else had pulled the strings. That night, he sat alone in his office, replaying Keller's recorder. The voice again. You took too long, Sheriff. Now she's gone again. In the background, faint, a sound he'd missed before. Water. Slow, rhythmic, dripping. He amplified it, counted the intervals. It wasn't random, it was mechanical. A pump, maybe. An irrigation line somewhere near running water. He pulled up a map, overlaying old oil field grids, water treatment plants, irrigation routes. Then he found it. An old reservoir 10 miles south of the Avery property, decommissioned in 2002. It matched the sound. He grabbed his coat. No backup this time. He didn't want interference. The reservoir sat quiet under the moonlight. The chain link fence was cut. Inside, the concrete basin was half filled with stagnant water, green and still. He swept his flashlight across the surface, then stopped. Something floated near the center. He waded in, boots sinking into the muck. It was a wooden crate, rotted, wrapped in wire. Inside, bones, clothes, and a necklace. The same heart-shaped pendant Rachel's mother had worn every day since she vanished. He whispered, "Oh, God." The forensics later confirmed the bones weren't Rachel's. Another woman, mid-30s, missing from Amarillo in 2000. Another thread in the web. Cole's gut told him what the reports didn't. The killer didn't just take one girl, he took many, and each time, he left a message for whoever dared to look. Days bled together. Cole stopped sleeping. Every sound felt like a warning. Every reflection felt watched. Deputies whispered he'd lost it, that he was seeing ghosts in every shadow, but ghosts don't leave footprints, and someone was. One morning, the janitor found a note taped to the sheriff's office door. A Polaroid again. This time, the sheriff himself, asleep at his desk, the caption scrawled beneath, "You're getting closer." The security system showed no breach, no cameras triggered. Whoever left it had been inside the building, maybe while Cole slept. He snapped, locked the door, ripped open the evidence board, threw photos across the room. He was done waiting for ghosts to speak. He was going to hunt one. He called in a profiler, Special Agent Dana Keene. Calm, precise, unflinching. She studied the case for hours before speaking. "This isn't random," she said. "He's been watching the investigation since the beginning. He likes control. He wants you to chase him." Cole nodded slowly. "Then we give him a reason to run." They set a trap, a fake press leak, claiming a new witness had come forward, someone who'd seen Avery alive in 2006. The story ran that night. Cole waited in the shadows of the station parking lot, rain pouring down in sheets. At 2:17 a.m., motion sensors tripped. A figure moved through the rain, heading straight for the evidence wing. Cole followed, silent. The figure stopped under the flicker of a security light. Tall, coat-soaked, face hidden. Cole raised his gun. "Hands where I can see them." The man turned slowly. Lightning split the sky, and for a second Cole saw him clearly. A face worn by years, eyes cold, familiar. Thomas Avery. Cole blinked, and the man bolted. The chase tore through the rain, boots slapping pavement, breath ragged, down the alley, over the fence, into the field. Cole fired a warning shot, missed. The man disappeared into the tree line. When the deputies arrived, the only thing left was a torn sleeve snagged on the fence wire, denim stained with blood. DNA confirmed the impossible. It was Avery's blood, the man who'd been declared dead almost 2 decades ago. The next day, Cole's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should have let me die." Attached, a photo of the sheriff's house, taken that morning. Cole rushed home. The door was open. Inside, the air felt wrong. He called out, silence. Then he saw it. On the wall, written in grease, "You buried her wrong." He stumbled back, heart pounding. What the hell does that mean? Agent Keene arrived minutes later. She examined the writing, the scene, the pattern. "He's telling you there's another site," she said. "Somewhere connected to her burial, maybe near the original car scene." They went back to County Road 7, the place where Rachel's car had been found. The land had been cleared long ago, weeds grown tall again. Cole walked slowly, flashlight scanning the ground. Then he saw it, a patch of disturbed earth, recent, shallow. They dug. Beneath the dirt, a metal lockbox. Inside, another Polaroid. Rachel again, this time lying still, pale, eyes closed. Behind her, written on the wall in black, "Let her rest." But the date at the bottom wasn't 1998, it was 2003. Cole's knees buckled. She'd lived for 5 years. 5 years of silence, of captivity, of torment. The truth hit like a hammer. She hadn't died when they thought. She'd been buried later. And the killer wanted them to know. That night, Cole drove out to the edge of town where the fields fade into desert. The rain had stopped, but thunder still rolled in the distance. He parked, engine off, staring into the dark. Then, faint in the mirror, headlights appeared behind him, the unmistakable twin beams of a blue pickup. He gripped his gun, heart racing. The lights stayed still. Then the engine revved once, twice, before cutting out. Silence. Cole stepped out into the night. "It's over!" he shouted. "You hear me? It's over!" No answer. Just the ticking of a cooling engine. He approached slowly, gun raised. The truck's driver's seat was empty. But in the passenger seat, a tape recorder waited, red light blinking. He pressed play. Avery's voice filled the air, calm, almost kind. "You keep chasing the dead, Sheriff, but the dead don't run. You do." Then, the sound of a door creaking open behind him. Cole turned, fade to black. The gunshot never came, only silence. Thick, suffocating silence that pressed against the night until it cracked. Sheriff Cole Harlan stood frozen beside the blue pickup, breath shallow, finger tight on the trigger, waiting for something. A sound, a move, a ghost. But there was nothing. The truck sat still, engine cooling, the tape recorder whispering static. The wind carried the smell of rain and rust. He turned slowly, flashlight sweeping the dark. The open field stretched endless, broken only by a line of mesquite trees bending under the wind. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then he heard it, footsteps, faint, dragging through the gravel behind him. He spun, gun raised. The light hit empty space. The footsteps stopped. A voice drifted from the dark, soft, measured. "You're finally here." Cole's pulse thundered in his ears. "Show yourself!" But the voice only laughed, a sound dry as sand. "You've been chasing me so long, Sheriff, I started to think you'd never make it." He fired once into the dark. The echo tore across the field. The laughter stopped. The flashlight beam cut through swirling dust. No body, no trace, just the empty truck, doors now wide open. Cole stepped closer, heart hammering. Inside the cab, a single sheet of paper lay on the seat. Typed words, soaked by rain. "Check the river." And just like that, the lights of the pickup died. By dawn, the sky was bruised purple. Cole stood by the Red River Bridge, the water crawling slow and thick below. Agents combed the banks, dogs barking against the current. Then one handler called out, a tarp, tangled in branches. Cole helped drag it in. Inside, a skeleton, wrists bound, remnants of a floral shirt. It wasn't Rachel. The dental records belonged to Sarah Leary, missing since 2001. Another name, another victim, same pattern. Cole stared into the river. How many? Back at the office, the forensics board overflowed. Faces, maps, strings, pins, a web spun by a ghost that refused to fade. Agent Keene leaned against the doorframe. "He's playing you," she said quietly. "He wants you off balance. He wants you to see what he sees." Cole rubbed his eyes. "Then tell me what that is." She hesitated. "A man who believes he's already dead." That night, Cole dreamed of headlights moving through fog. He was driving, but the road kept shifting, leading him back to the same intersection, the same sign. County Road 7. Rachel stood in the middle of it, barefoot, eyes hollow, whispering something he couldn't hear. When he reached for her, she vanished. And he woke with the taste of river water in his mouth. He didn't tell anyone about the dream. He just went back to work. 2 days later, a call came from Amarillo PD. A break-in at a storage unit leased under a false name, T. Avery. Inside, a wall of tapes labeled only by dates. Cole and Keene drove out immediately. The air inside the unit was cold, heavy with dust. Rows of VHS cassettes lined the walls, hundreds of them. One sat in the player, already loaded. Cole pressed play. Static, then an image, a chair in a concrete room, a woman crying, a voice behind the camera. Steady, calm, instructive. "Look at the lens," the woman begged. The voice continued, unfazed. "Tell them what happens when they stop looking." Cole shut it off. His hands shook. He looked at Keene. "There's more." They cataloged every tape, victims dating from 1997 to 2004, each one missing from a different Texas county, each one ending the same. A static fade, a line whispered in that same voice. "You stopped looking too soon." But one tape was different. No label, no timestamp, just the word sheriff. Cole's gut twisted. He pressed play. The screen flickered. His own office appeared. The desk, the lamp, and him. Asleep, head down. The same Polaroid scene, but in motion. The camera moved closer, the breathing heavy, the whisper closer every night. Then darkness. Keene froze. "This was filmed inside your station." Cole's chest burned. "That means he's inside my town." They pulled every access log, every camera feed. Nothing. The system had been wiped again. Clean, professional. Whoever was behind this knew the department better than he did. That night, Cole went home for the first time in days. The house was dark, the air still. On the kitchen table, a small box wrapped in newspaper. No note. He opened it carefully. Inside, a sheriff's badge. Old, tarnished, but not his. The engraving read, "Sheriff D. Miller," the man who held the office before him. The man who died of a heart attack in 1999. But on the back of the badge, scratched deep into the metal, was a date. 03/14/98. Rachel's disappearance. Cole's breath caught. Was Miller part of it or a victim too? He called the archives, demanded Miller's old case files. The clerk hesitated. "Sir, most of those were destroyed in the 2002 fire." Cole froze. "What fire?" The clerk paused. "The one that started in the evidence wing. No cause ever found." Cole slammed the phone down. It was all connected. Avery, Keller, Miller, the fire, the tapes. Every man who touched the case ended up burned, buried, or gone. Lightning flashed outside. He looked up. A silhouette stood at the edge of his yard, still, watching. He ran to the door, flung it open. Nothing. Only a fresh set of muddy footprints leading away toward the fields. He followed them into the dark, breath fogging in the cold. The prints led to the tree line, then stopped. He lifted his flashlight. Hanging from a branch above him, a Polaroid swinging in the wind. It showed his house, tonight, lights on, him standing in the doorway. Written beneath, "The next one's already gone." Cole's blood went cold. He ran back inside, grabbed the phone. Before he could dial, it rang. He answered. Silence. Then a child's voice, faint, trembling. "Please, can I go home now?" He whispered, "Rachel?" Click. The line went dead. Cole stood there, shaking, the receiver slipping from his hand. The storm outside cracked open, thunder rolling across the plains like a warning. He knew then. This wasn't just a manhunt. It was a message written across decades, and he was only reading the middle of it. Agent Keene arrived minutes later, rain streaming down her face. "We traced the number," she said. "It came from an old landline, disconnected years ago. Guess where?" Cole didn't need to ask. He already knew. Miller's gas station. They drove there in silence. The place loomed through the rain. Boards torn, roof sagging. The same dead pumps where Rachel had last stood. The air smelled of rotten gasoline. Cole pushed open the door. The floor creaked. At the counter sat a rotary phone, black, dusty, receiver off the hook. The dial tone droned softly, endless. Keene whispered, "How's it still working?" Cole reached out, lifted it, static. Then a voice, not Avery's, not Keller's, a woman's, calm. "You found the end of the road, Sheriff. Now tell me, do you remember me?" The lights flickered, the phone line hissed. He whispered, "Rachel?" The voice laughed, a sound both human and hollow. "You never looked close enough." Then the line went dead, and the lights exploded in a burst of sparks. Keene screamed. Cole fell back, covering his eyes. When the darkness settled, the phone was gone. Only a fresh Polaroid lay on the counter. It showed two figures, one standing, one seated, the standing figure, but yet unmistakably Cole. The caption below, "Welcome home." Dawn bled into the boarded windows of Miller's gas station like a crime scene light. Dust hung in the air, glittering in thin shafts, and the Polaroid on the counter stared up at Sheriff Cole Harlan like a mirror that remembered too much. Welcome home. He could feel the weight of the words in the floorboards, in the nails, in the old phone line that wasn't supposed to work and somehow did. Agent Dana Keene moved her beam across the shelves, over expired oil cans and sun-bleached maps, over the spot where the wall phone once hung like a lifeline that snapped. "It's staged," she said softly, like she was trying not to wake something that had only been pretending to sleep. But who staged it and when? Cole didn't answer. He was listening to the thrum of the building, to the rhythm of the road beyond, to the echo of a woman's voice that had threaded itself into his nerves. Do you remember me? He turned the Polaroid over. Nothing on the back, no smear of ink, no fingerprint, just the cold, clean surface of a message that didn't need proof to be true. He stepped behind the counter and crouched. The kickboard panel had fresh scuff marks, tight arcs where something metal had dragged, then stopped. He slid a knife into the seam and pried. The panel popped. Inside, a shallow void, empty, until he tilted his light and found it. A single locker key taped to the underside, dangling like a lure. Stamped on the head were 4 numbers, 3147. Keene exhaled. County storage? Bus depot, Cole said, already dialing dispatch. The old one on Harwood, closed in 2005, half the lockers still there. They were in the cruiser before the dial tone ended. Morning broke hard and colorless across Miller's Creek as they drove, the town turning its face away from them like a witness who saw too much and told too little. The bus depot squatted at the edge of an abandoned lot, a concrete rib cage with faded schedules still bolted to the wall, routes to nowhere, times that never came. The door gave under a stiff shove. Pigeons scattered from the rafters. The air smelled like damp cardboard and old rain. Locker 3147 sat near the back, its paint blistered and peeling. The key slid in and turned without complaint. Inside, a manila envelope thick with film, Polaroids rubber-banded in stacks of 10, a cassette labeled in careful block letters, County Road 7, a folded road map with 3 points circled in red. Keene took a breath she didn't let out. He's curating it now, building your museum for you. Cole didn't trust his hands. He set the envelope on a broken bench and opened the cassette first. An old handheld player lay under a seat as if it had been waiting. He fed the tape and hit play. Static, wind, the low thrum of an engine. Then the sound of boots on gravel and a voice near the mic. Male, measured, almost patient. Record of movement, March 14th. Time mark 12:03. Traffic eastbound, 1 unit. Female driver. Stops at mark. More boots. Cloth rustling. The sound of a door creaking, then shutting. Keys left. Car alive. Scene reset. A pause. We repeat when the road forgets. Keene looked up sharply. It's a log. Not a confession. A process. Cole shut the player off, throat dry. He made their disappearance a job. He spread the map on the bench. 3 circles. The gas station, the bridge over the Red River, a county maintenance shed 5 miles north of the Monroe property. The handwriting was blocky, careful, the kind of control that bleaches emotion out of letters. In the margin, never twice the same way, always twice the same place. Cole pointed to the 3rd circle. Nobody's touched that shed in years. Keene shook her head. He wants you to go there, so let's not. He was already folding the map. If it's a trap, it's also a door. They went anyway, because that's what you do when the past draws a map and dares you to walk it. The shed sat behind a stand of scrub oaks, its padlock new against rust. Cole cut it. Inside, the air had that heavy chemical cold of places that don't forgive the living. Shelves lined with county issue, paint cans, broken cones, a desiccated wasp nest. In the middle, a metal desk bolted to the floor. On top, a portable TV, the old kind with a handle and rabbit ears wrapped in tape. Next to it, a single extension cord leading to a generator that shouldn't have had gas, and did. Keene stood by the door, hand hovering near her holster. We do this, we don't blink. Cole hit the switch. The TV woke in a flare of snow, then steadied into a picture that made the room tilt. A feed of the sheriff's office bullpen, live, the angle high and surgical, as if from inside the wall. Deputies moving like quiet ghosts, a clock with this morning's time, the evidence board like a lattice of nerves. Keene swore under her breath. He's in your walls. The feed cut, another angle, another room, Cole's office, the desk, the lamp, the exact frame from the tape labeled sheriff, but today, not months ago. 2 new photos taped where there had been none. Keller, closed and leery, confirmed. The camera zoomed with a remote hand you couldn't see. Then the screen went black and a line of text typed itself in green on green, letter by letter, the way old machines talk when they want to feel alive. Hello, Cole. Keene stepped closer, scanning for transmitters, for a line, for anything human to hold. He's piggybacking your network, analog to digital. It's primitive, but it's smart. Another line appeared. You asked if I remember you. The cursor blinked, indifferent. I remember everyone who forgot. The generator coughed. The picture warped, shifted. Now a still image. Rachel Monroe at 17. Yearbook portrait, the face the town carried like a saint's. The eyes started to pixelate, rearranging into a different face. Older, gaunter, the contours fractured but familiar. Rachel at 22 maybe, alive in a way the living aren't. Then the picture split down the middle and half of Cole's own face slid into place, matching her eyes like a bad miracle. The message typed again, slower. You look for yourself in the dead. Stop. Cole's jaw tightened. Where are you? The cursor paused, then flickered. You're late. The TV popped and died. The generator sputtered to a stop. The shed inhaled its silence again. Keen's radio hissed. Dispatch in a panic. Voices over voices. Sheriff, copy? We've got motion alerts from the station. Evidence wing just opened. No access card used. They drove hard. Sirens cut the morning to ribbons. By the time they hit the lot, the front doors were propped with bricks, the way you hold your mouth open when you plan to shout. Inside, the bullpen was empty. Every workstation screen displayed the same thing, a blinking prompt waiting for a command you shouldn't type. The evidence door gaped. Cole's badge still worked. The lights inside trembled to life a step behind their footsteps. The bracelet evidence bag was back on the steel table, returned. The seal remelted as if by a careful hand, the chain coiled in a sign that wasn't random. The shape was unmistakable. The number 2 nested against the number 3. 23 years. Victims. Or the date. 03/14/98. Keen took a photo without breathing. He can walk in, rewrite, and walk out. A low whine rose behind them, the building's bones complaining. Then the overhead fluorescents strobed and died. Red emergency strips took their place, washing the room with panic. Footsteps above, quick, deliberate. Cole went for the stairwell. Keen took the opposite hall, voice on the radio. 3rd floor, north wing, sound approaching elevator shaft. The elevator dinged once, cheerful, obscene. Its doors opened on an empty car and a portable speaker on the floor, humming with the ghost of an old country song. Cole kicked it silent and stared at the ceiling panel. The screws were loose. He hauled himself up and into the crawl space, the heat pressing in like a hand. A narrow maintenance path ran above the halls, dust thick. Footprints fresh. He followed them, a slow, low run through the building's throat, until the footprints broke at a grate that looked down into his office. A man waited there, back to the door, mechanic's jacket, cap pulled low. The posture was a dare. Cole slid the grate an inch, enough to see the angle, enough to feel the past arrange itself for a shot he'd never forgive. He dropped, landed hard, rolled, came up fast with the Glock tight and level. Hands up, the man didn't turn. He raised his hands slow, palms stained with work that never ends. We've been here before, he said, voice calm, unhurried. Different room, same mistake. Avery, Cole said. It wasn't a question. The man glanced at the reflection in the dark window, just enough for a profile, older, lean, a scar like a hyphen on his forearm. That's one of my names. Turn around. He did, finally. The face was wrong and right at once, like a blueprint you recognize for a building that was never built. He smiled in a way that wasn't a smile. You keep looking for a monster with one body. That's not what this is. Keen's silhouette filled the doorway, weapon low, breath controlled. On your knees. Avery, if that was who he was, tilted his head, studying them like specimens. You brought the profiler. Good, she knows this part. Keen didn't blink. Hands on your head. He complied. He went to his knees. Cole moved in, cuffs ready, a step too close to a trap he'd been warned about in every academy lesson and forgot in every dream. The lights flicked. The window made a hard, high sound. Something metal popped behind the desk. Smoke, a flash, a hiss. Not a bomb, a curtain, a flood of cold vapor rolling across the floor, swallowing angles, breaking lines. A hand shot out of the fog from the opposite side of the room, caught Cole's wrist, turned, and the cuffs snapped shut, on him. He hit the floor, elbow exploding with pain. Keen's shout cut through the haze. A shape moved left, another right. 2 men, same jacket, same cap, one tall, one just as tall in the fog. There isn't one, the voice called, everywhere and nowhere. There's a way. Keen fired. The round tore a hole in the mist and kept going. The sprinkler system triggered, rain inside a building, everything slick, everything loud. The shapes vanished through the emergency door. One real, one decoy, or both real enough to leave the same footprints. Cole kicked off the cuff with a boot heel, tore after them, Keen at his shoulder, down the stairwell into the roar of alarms and boots and voices. The alley was empty. The blue pickup idled at the far curb, driver's door open, the seat vacant, a tape recorder on the dash blinking like an unblinking eye. Cole approached slow, weapon raised. The tape clicked and played on its own, a dry whisper riding the engine's purr. You're still looking in the wrong place. A pause, then the line that scraped the bone. She wasn't taken from the road, Sheriff. She was taken from the light. Keen scanned the roofline. Sniper? Look out? Cole shook his head, staring at the police station's glowing sign, the letters stuttering in the rain. No, the light. He saw it then, the shape he'd been circling for months, the gas station's flood lamps, the streetlights on County Road 7, the diner's neon, the camera glare. Every scene lit like a stage, every abduction marked by illumination, not darkness. He needed light, not to see, he swallowed. To film. Keen's eyes hardened. So the first scene was a set. Every scene, Cole said. The pickup died, the tape stopped. On the passenger seat, another Polaroid waited, edges still warm. It showed the interior of a warehouse, concrete pillars, a high catwalk, a wall of lights pointed at a single chair bolted to the floor. On the back, an address stenciled in block letters and a time, tonight, 11:47 p.m. Keen holstered her weapon. This is where he wants it to end. Cole slid the photo into his coat. Or begin again. They brought no sirens to the warehouse because some endings don't need an audience. The building crouched at the edge of the rail yard, windows punched out, doors chained shut and then unchained by someone who didn't consider them doors. Inside, the air was a metallic hush. The wall of lights stood cold and blind. The chair sat in the center, waiting like it never learned another posture. The generators rattled awake the second their boots crossed the threshold. The lights roared on, turning the floor to a white ocean and their shadows to black knives. Speakers hidden in the rafters crackled. A woman's voice filled the room, steady, close. "Hello, Cole." He didn't breathe. "Rachel." A beat. "You never looked where I told you." Keen scanned the catwalk. "Sources bouncing, pre-recorded?" "No," the voice said, almost amused. "I'm here." The catwalk thrummed. Footsteps above, then behind, then everywhere. One set belonged to a man in a cap, another set belonged to another man in a cap. A third set moved with the softness of someone who learned to step around creaks and boards. Then the ladder rattled and she descended, thin, older, a face carved by years that shouldn't have been given, eyes lit with a fever that wasn't fever at all. She walked into the lights without blinking and stood by the chair like it was a podium. Cole's mouth went dry. "Rachel?" She smiled, not a saint in a photograph now, not a ghost, not an echo. "You keep making me a headline. That's the problem." Her gaze flicked to the catwalk, and they keep thinking they're the story. Two men in identical jackets moved along the rail, mirrored, choreographed, like one thought in two bodies. "They were tools," she said calmly. "Sets need hands." Keen's voice stayed level. "You survived." "I adapted," Rachel said. "You'd be surprised what a camera does to a person who refuses to vanish." She nodded toward the lights. "You came to close a case. I came to close a loop." Cole's mind tore itself in two. "You're saying—" "I'm saying," Rachel cut in, "that once you understand the director, you can rewrite the scene." She pointed to the chair. "Do you want to see how it was done, Sheriff? Do you want to finally stop looking too soon?" Keen moved half a step, an angle that meant protection and doubt. "Hands where I can see them." Rachel lifted her palms, empty. "I asked for light because light records truth. Darkness only excuses it." She looked past them, up to the catwalk. "Gentlemen, curtain." The two men froze as a third figure stepped out from the opposite stairwell. No cap, no jacket, just a face the town would recognize from church basements and charity drives. Deputy Marshal Allen, the county liaison who'd drifted in when the FBI did and stayed like furniture. He held a remote in one hand and indifference in the other. "Show's over," he said, almost bored. Keen's weapon snapped toward him. "Drop it." He did. The remote clattered. Remote. The lights did not change. Rachel's voice softened, knife sheathing itself in velvet. "He wired your feeds, Sheriff. He engineered your erasures. Not for me. For himself. Because if nobody watches, nothing happened. Isn't that right, Alan?" Alan's jaw ticked. "You talk too much." "Not enough," she said. "Not in 1998. Not for 5 years." Her eyes found Cole and held him. "You came here for a confession. I can give you something better. A blueprint." The wall behind her flared to life. A projector splashing schematics across concrete. Angles of the gas station. Sightlines to the road. Timing grids. Vehicle placements. Not fantasies. Plans. Dates annotated. Initials that weren't initials but shifts. Units. Badge numbers. A rhythm. A machine. Keen said it first, voice low. "This wasn't one predator. It was a production." Rachel nodded once. "And the town paid for tickets." Cole felt the floor roll under him. Names on the wall: Keller, Miller, Allen, some with arrows leading out of frame, some crossed, some buried under layers that meant fire and flood and the silence of men who retire early and die younger. In the corner, circled twice, a word that wasn't a name, Avery, and beside it, in smaller print, cover, continuity, composite. Keene steadied herself by getting colder. So who are the two on the catwalk? Stand-ins, Rachel said. Guards, operators, faces you remember because you were told to. She pointed up. Come down. They didn't. Figures like that don't, not when the lights are on them. They backed into shadow and broke left and right at once, rats running 2 directions to see which hole holds mercy. Keene was already moving, calling it in. Teams sliding the perimeter shut with the efficiency of a guillotine. Alan took a step. Cole took his gun with a speed Alan didn't expect. Rachel walked to the chair and touched it like a grave. You want your crack, Sheriff? Here. The part where everyone hears what they pretended not to. She looked into the nearest camera she had put there herself. There was a night in March, and there was a plan, and there was a girl who wouldn't disappear on cue. The building filled with the sound of boots and orders. The catwalk gave up one man in cuffs, then another, both wearing the same jacket, both swearing they were drivers, mechanics, never more than hands. Keene's voice rose above the din, measured, relentless, reading them their rights like a right. Cole lowered his weapon. The lights burned steady. The chair waited for someone to finally sit and speak. Rachel did not sit. She stood, spine straight, voice steady, and told them what light remembers, that some disappearances are choreographed, that some monsters wear badges, that some ghosts are created in edit bays with missing footage and a town's willingness to blink. When she finished, the room felt less like a trap and more like a map. Keene nodded once, a promise. We'll corroborate, we'll grind, we'll pry every nail. Rachel's eyes didn't leave Cole's. You'll be tempted to end it here, she said. Don't. The first scene was never the beginning. Outside, sirens sketched a perimeter around the past. Inside, the lights hummed like a pulse refusing to fade. Cole looked up at the schematics, at the word Avery floating like a stage direction, at the line in the margin Rachel hadn't written but had lived. Never twice the same way. Always twice the same place. He holstered his gun. The case had cracked, not cleanly, not mercifully, but along the grain it always had, and in the fracture, something living showed through. He turned toward the door, toward the map that wasn't a wall anymore. Behind him, Rachel's voice followed, calm, final, the kind of line you don't cut out in the edit. Sheriff, she said, if you want the truth, bring more light. Morning came slow and gray, washing the warehouse in a color that looked like erasure. Report vans were already there, feeding on the story before it could even finish forming. Inside, the crime scene lights burned low, throwing long shadows across the floor where names and numbers had once been projected. Sheriff Cole Harlan sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, coat over his shoulders, eyes hollow from a night spent writing statements that never felt like the truth. Agent Keene paced nearby, phone pressed to her ear. They're confirming multiple jurisdictions, she said. Some of these men were on payrolls, some were ghosts. Half the county records have gaps big enough to drive through. She ended the call, met his stare. It's not over, Cole. It's just become visible. Rachel Monroe stood under the same sky that had watched her vanish 27 years earlier. She was silent, face unreadable, hair cut short as if to erase the years. When she finally spoke, it was almost to herself. They filmed everything, she said, but they never filmed each other. Cole stepped closer. We'll protect you now. She smiled, tired. From who? The camera or the people holding it? He didn't answer. Some truths can't be promised, they can only be postponed. The Bureau hauled the evidence away in numbered crates, tapes, maps, the projector, the chair. Every label was a wound. Reporters shouted from beyond the tape, calling her survivor, calling him hero. The words slid off both of them like rain on oil. By noon, the warehouse was empty. The echo of boots and generators faded into the hum of cicadas. Cole drove Rachel to the station in silence. She watched the highway blur through the window and said softly, You know the gas station's still wired, right? He frowned. We cut power last week. Not the power, she said, the memory. At the office, Keene pulled him into the briefing room. We cross-checked her testimony. The dates line up, the names match Keller's notes, but she slid a photo across the table. Look, this was taken at one of the supposed filming sites in 2001. That's Rachel, and that, she tapped a second figure, is you. Cole blinked. That's impossible. It's your build, your badge, your car in the background. He stared at the image until the edges wavered. Deep fake before deep fakes, he muttered. Or someone wanted me in their film. Keene's eyes stayed steady. Then we find who directed it. That night, the station felt wrong again. Too quiet, air too still. The evidence board in Cole's office had been stripped bare by command order, but when he turned on the desk lamp, the wall behind it glimmered faintly. Invisible ink, lines drawn under UV, coordinates looping back to the Avery property. Beneath them, a single sentence in small, careful script. We filmed the sheriff last. He drove out alone. The land was bone dry, moon slicing the fields in half. The barn still stood, but something new gleamed inside. A row of floodlights, wired to a generator that hummed before he touched it. On a table, a single camera pointed toward the door, already recording. A reel clicked, and the old country song began again. Scratchy, patient, eternal. Cole stepped into this frame because there was nowhere else left to stand. His own reflection filled the lens. Behind him, another shadow moved. Not Avery, not Rachel, someone broader, older. Sheriff Miller's badge glinted on the man's chest, the dead predecessor, alive or wearing another man's face. The man spoke first. "Every town needs a myth, Cole. We just built ours." "You killed them to keep it," Cole said. "Wrong," the man smiled slow. "We filmed them so they'd never die." The lights flared white, erasing edges, swallowing both of them in glare. For a moment it felt like the entire county was inside the beam. Every lie, every missing name, every night lit too brightly to remember properly. Then the power cut. Darkness, silence, only the tape rolling, marking time. When dawn came again, deputies found the barn empty, generator still warm, camera still running. On the film, one frame of light, one frame of darkness, and a voice saying, "Scene 7. Back in Miller's Creek, the sun rose over a town already rewriting its story. Reporters called it closure. The Bureau called it ongoing. Rachel called it unfinished. And somewhere, in an editing room no one had ever found, someone spliced a new reel, labeling it with fresh ink. Texas, 1998, Cold Case Cracked, Part 7. The sound at the end was laughter, or static, or both. Rain again, always rain when the story tries to wash itself clean. 3 days after the barn burned, Miller's Creek woke to static on every local channel. No signal, no news. Just the grain of a blank feed, and underneath, the faint crackle of that same country tune the killer loved. By the time technicians traced it, the broadcast was already over. A minute of white noise, then a single frame. Sheriff Cole Harlan standing in a circle of light, staring straight into camera. No sound. No timestamp. Then black. They called it a glitch. The town called it proof. Proof that the film wasn't done. The Bureau sealed the case behind language that meant never again. Rachel Monroe went into protective custody and disappeared a second time, this time on purpose. Agent Keene was reassigned to Dallas, her report stamped inconclusive. And the Miller's Creek Sheriff's Department got a new chief, younger, quieter, eager to forget the legend his badge now carried. But forgetting doesn't stick to Miller's Creek, not when the soil remembers. Cole's cruiser was found a week later, engine off, parked behind the old drive-in theater where the county once held summer fairs. Inside the glove compartment, a flash drive wrapped in brown tape labeled Final Cut. The drive contained exactly 7 video files, each opened with the same frame, Rachel in silhouette, floodlights behind her, and ended with a title card that simply read, Texas 1998 Cold Case Cracked. Scene number. 7 scenes, 7 years of disappearances, no scene 8. Until now. The FBI archivist who reviewed the files logged one anomaly. The metadata showed a final unlisted clip. No title, just coordinates, 30 miles east of town. A transmission ping repeating every night at 11:47 p.m., the same minute Rachel had vanished all those years ago. Keene came back quietly, without authorization. She drove to the coordinates at dusk. The road was dirt, washed out, bordered by fields that glowed faintly under lightning. At 11:46, the radio cut to static. At 11:47, a light appeared ahead, single source, low, steady. A screen mounted on a tripod in the middle of the field, running the final feed. Cole's face again, older, calm, eyes open but unfocused. He spoke once, the mic barely catching it. "If you're watching, keep the lights on." Then the feed looped. Keene stood there until dawn, rain streaking her coat, knowing every investigator who came after would write hoax in their report. She didn't. She wrote signal continues. Back in town, the diner reopened, the high school paper ran a memorial, and the mayor promised closure the way politicians do, by repeating the word until it sounds real. But sometimes at night, when the wind shifts over County Road 7, people swear they see a flash, a camera flash maybe, cutting through the dark. Drivers pull over, thinking it's lightning. It never is. Some say the light belongs to Cole, still chasing the next frame. Others say Rachel took the film with her and kept filming, because once a story begins, it demands an ending. But most of Miller's Creek just turn their porch lights toward the highway and leave them on, same as they've done since 1998, afraid of what the dark might show when it finally develops. Because in this town, the past isn't buried, it's projected, and every night at 11:47 p.m., the screen flickers somewhere out in the fields, whispering the same title in the static. Texas, 1998, cold case cracked. Then silence, then the click of a camera waiting for the next flash. The signal didn't die, it learned. Every night at 11:47, the coordinates blinked alive like a heartbeat on a flatline screen, and Agent Dana Keene drove farther out to meet it. Fields, pylons, irrigation ditches glittering with the last of the storm, until the map turned to blank space and the road turned to memory. She learned the ritual. Pull up, kill the engine, let the static wash in. Watch the tripod flare to life with that washed-out frame. Cole in the circle of light, unblinking, unafraid, saying the same line like a password for the living. If you're watching, keep the lights on, then loop, then nothing. She brought spectrum analyzers and a battered field kit. The meter showed a dirty carrier piggybacking on abandoned maintenance frequencies. County, rail, farm pumps, leaping relays like stones across a creek. Primitive, yes, but clever, home-built. Someone had taught the ghost how to hop. She traced one hop to a windmill that shouldn't have turned, another to a church steeple with a lightning rod that hummed when no storm was near, a third to the rusted scoreboard at the old high school field, the bulbs ticking on for a breath at 11:47 and going dead before anyone could swear they'd seen them. The town called it haunting, Keene called it engineering. It didn't matter, both were true. She filed quiet addenda the Bureau wouldn't love. The broadcast is not residual, it is maintained. Someone was tending the myth like a garden. Rachel Monroe read the reports without touching them. In the safe house, no sign on the road, no mail in the box. She watched the sun burn off the morning fog and held the lives the state had given her like costumes that didn't quite fit. She kept the shades angled to steal a slice of sky and left the lamps on all day. She didn't ask for new names. Names wore out. Lights didn't. The case had fractured into committees with clipped voices, task forces with binders that matched, and conclusions that didn't. A state senator promised transparency. A retired judge promised a blue ribbon panel. The new sheriff promised a community forum in the high school gym and sat in front of a microphone under lamps too bright and said the right words into a crowd that refused to decide if it wanted absolution or blood. Somewhere above the rafters, a red tally light winked and went dark. No one looked up. Keene went back to the beginning because the end was making her superstitious. Miller's gas station, County Road 7, the diner with the neon E that never quite worked. She stood in each pool of light at the minute the feed woke 40 miles away and listened to the wires sing. You could hear it if you let your teeth rest together, a treble, a thin hum, a current sliding along rust. Not a haunt, a circuit. She found the first box by accident, tucked behind a hurricane fence at the substation, the size of a lunch pail, hand-soldered, stamped with a serial number that meant nothing, and scratches that meant everything. Small, careful, block letters. Scene 1. Inside, a radio board, a tape loop, a timer wheel with a missing tooth. She thumbed the dial to 11:46 and felt the detent catch at the broken place like a scar that never quite healed. When she shut the lid, she knew there were more. The second was in the cell tower. The third, inside a farm's irrigation controller, wrapped in plastic like a relic. Scene 2, Scene 3. The steel tongues ticked in time. She didn't disable them. Not yet. A good trap tells you more alive than dead. At midnight, she wrote to herself in a pocket notebook. Every scene has a projector. Every projector has a room. Find the room. And under that, smaller, who splices the reels now that Keller is gone and Alan is in cuffs? Back at the safe house, Rachel didn't sleep so much as rehearse. She sat in the kitchen with a cup she didn't drink from and listened to the house wake and sleep. The refrigerator hum, the pipes sigh, the porch light's filament tick when moths battered themselves against truth. The memory of the warehouse hadn't left her. Not the chair, not the men on the catwalk, not the way the town's bones had flickered across the wall in blue chalk and made a machine out of love and fear. She thought of Cole's voice on the loop, the plainness of it, the way he'd learned to speak to rooms instead of people. You do that when rooms become the only witnesses you can trust. On the fourth night, 11:47 came early. Keene saw it in the corner of the monitor as she crossed the county line, the timer wheels she hadn't touched stuttering forward, the carrier wave thickening like a voice clearing its throat. The field at the coordinates lit before she killed the headlights, before she'd set the tripod, before she'd braced for Cole's face. The screen came up black. A cursor blinked at the bottom, green on green, the way old machines flirt with being alive. A line typed itself with a patience that felt like a hand on her shoulder. "Hello, Dana." She didn't move. "I see you," she said to the empty field. "You're early," the machine wrote. "Good, so am I." She checked the spectrum. The wave was broader tonight, richer, as if the ghost had eaten. She spoke again, low, even. "You maintaining the system or inheriting it?" "Not an heir," the line answered, "a continuity editor." Lightning spidered on the horizon. The smell of creosote rolled off the ties at the rail spur. Keen kept her voice steady. You filmed them so they wouldn't die. That was the line. But the town keeps dying anyway. The town is the audience, the machine wrote. They bought tickets. They keep sitting. She felt the old heat in her chest she only got when a witness turned the table. What do you want? The cursor paused. Then, the same thing you want to finish. The feed cut to the familiar circle of light, but Cole didn't appear. The camera stared at an empty chair. The lamps weren't quartz white anymore. They were warm, domestic, like a living room that pretends nothing bad can happen in it. The microphone hissed. A woman's breath moved close to the grill. Rachel's voice. Agent Keen, she said softly. Not to the room, but to the field, the wires, the moths. Stop pulling fuses. Follow the light to the room. The image jumped as if the camera had been lifted, handheld now, crossing concrete that knew footsteps by name. A door swung into frame. A sign, hand-painted, flaked to ghost letters. AVERY and SON. Repair. Not the ranch, not the barn. The shop, downtown, hiding in daylight all along. Keen was already moving before the frame cut to black. The engine turned once and caught. The tires threw shale. The radio filled with voices she didn't answer. Miller's Creek slept the way a stage sleeps between acts. Scenery standing, house lights down, the audience murmuring about what it all means. She didn't hit the siren. She let the town dream one more minute in ignorance. The shop's front windows were papered over, but lights bled at the corners. She slipped the lock with a warrant no judge had signed and swept the beam low. Benches, vices, oil darkened the concrete like constellations. At the back, a service door breathed a thin draft of cold, and beyond it a basement she'd never seen on any permit. The air changed on the stairs, drier, older, still. She heard it before she saw it, the click of a timer wheel, the soft digesting purr of a fan, the whisper of tape. The room blossomed under her light, projectors in a row like organs in a church, spool to spool, loop to loop, each labeled in the same small, careful block. Scene 1 through Scene 7. The wall across from them wasn't a wall. It was a screen painted onto poured concrete, edges feathered to make the edge of the story disappear. In the center, an empty chair. On a table, a new machine idled. Digital, the old system teaching the new one to breathe. Beside it, a ledger. Names, dates, locations, the neatness of a hand that believes neatness is virtue. She ran a finger down the last page. Harlan. Signal maintained. Keen. Receptive. Monroe. Author. Her breath stopped on the last line. Audience. Constant. Hello, Dana, said a voice behind her. Not from a speaker, not from a ghost, but from a throat. Rachel stepped into the cone of light with a calm that could have been peace or aim. You found the room. Keen kept her hands where they could be seen. You found it first. I had the keys, Rachel said. I learned where they kept them. She glanced at the projectors, blinking like patient animals. You thought the film was a weapon. It was a mirror. They killed in light because they wanted witnesses who wouldn't testify, so we testify back, every night, until someone refuses the ticket. Someone like you, Keen said. Rachel didn't smile. Someone like the town. Footsteps above. 2 sets, not hurried, practiced. Keen and Rachel both heard the rhythm and read it the same way. Stand-ins, operators, hands. A door creaked. A man's shadow crouched on the stairs, familiar as a rumor. Another eased in from the far corridor and stayed in the blind spot a murderer memorizes. Keen didn't draw, not yet. If this is the room, she said, then ending it is a switch. Rachel nodded once toward the ledger. Not a switch, a decision. The first man spoke from the dark with a voice Keen knew from tapes and transcriptions and nights she'd imagined she'd left behind. Careful, ladies, the shadow said pleasantly. If you kill the lights, the picture goes dark, and the dark is where we started. Rachel looked past Keen, past the men, into the lens that no camera carried, but which the room itself seemed to offer. Miller's Creek, she said, steady, the way anchors do when the broadcast is live. You can stop buying tickets. The timer clicked to 11:47 and held there, quivering at the broken tooth. The projectors whirred, the wall warmed. Somewhere far out in the fields, a tripod woke to life with no one to touch it. In the shop's basement, the lamps ramped up. The circle of light found the chair, and the men in the doorway blinked like animals dragged into noon. Keen raised her badge and her voice at the same time. Hands, now. The first man froze. The second hesitated, eyes slitting against the glare. Rachel reached to the ledger and drew a line through the word audience and wrote witness in its place. Upstairs, a fuse blew. The room dipped, then steadied. Keen kept her stance. Rachel kept her voice. The men wavered because men do in the light. And somewhere a county that had been watching itself die decided whether to keep watching or to see. The room did what rooms do when truth steps inside. It tightened. The air thinned over the projectors. The fan blades drew a breath that wasn't air, and the circle of light on the painted wall brightened to a white that made lies blink. Agent Dana Keene didn't lower her badge, didn't raise her gun, just held her voice at a steady pitch that could cut without drawing blood. Hands! The first figure obeyed, palms up, shoulders set like a man who'd rehearsed surrender as another kind of performance. The second hung back where the angle still held shadow. Rachel Monroe didn't step away from the ledger. She drew the line slower now, the pencil carving the paper with the patience of someone who has learned the difference between a mark and a scar. Audience struck. Witness written. The timer wheel clicked again. 11:47 refusing to pass, a second branching forever. Out in the fields, the tripod screen flashed to life for whoever wasn't asleep, for the porch lights left on as habit, for the ham radios tuned to rumor. In the basement, the old mechanical projectors hummed their vowel of persistence while the new digital box blinked with a softer, greedier intelligence. Keene's eyes took inventory without moving. 4 projectors cabled to one bus, the bus to the mains to a knife switch running to a breaker labeled in that careful block, feed. She filed that word, feed, like cattle, like film, like a town that keeps buying tickets. Alan taught you to wire like this? Keene asked, to keep the room speaking. Alan learned it here, Rachel said. He thought he invented a language. He didn't. He inherited it. She tapped the ledger's earlier pages with one finger, each like a whispered headline. Keller read the dials. Miller guarded the door. The rest? She glanced toward the staircase. They turned cranks and looked away. The first man, cap off now, face more ordinary than a myth allows, shifted enough that his boots scraped concrete. You have no idea what you're doing. Rachel didn't look at him. On the contrary, she nodded at Keene. We're deciding if the town stays in audience. Keene heard the plural and didn't correct it. She let the silence separate shape from shadow. Kneel, she told the second figure gently, the way you tell a dog to heel because you can't promise food. The man hesitated, a quarter second too long, then sank. His jacket carried the same oil and metal scent as Avery's and Keller's, the same uniform of anonymity, not Avery himself. Avery had always been the word on the board, not the man. Composite, cover, continuity. Keene remembered the annotation on the warehouse wall like a bruise that kept its color. The projectors brightened, not from any hand in the room, but because time itself had a cue. The wall bloomed with the frame that shouldn't have existed, the gas station in 1998, as if someone had cleaned the lens of memory, with Rachel at the counter and a younger officer, fresh badge, tight jaw, signing a logbook. Sheriff Miller stepped into frame behind him to block the camera's view, too late by half. The picture held, alive with the flicker of fluorescent ballast. Sound rode in, the tap of a pen, the ding of a door. Then the line Keller had left on a cassette, the one Keene knew by heart, spoken by a mouth she hadn't yet seen move. We repeat when the road forgets. No, Rachel said, quiet but sharp enough to catch. We repeat when the audience forgives. Keene cut her glance to the digital box. It had been upgrading the myth one night at a time, piggybacking those county frequencies, riding church rods, chewing through the scoreboard bulbs. A machine was teaching a town to remember. She stepped toward the bus, toward the knife switch labeled feed. The first man lifted his chin. Throw it and nothing plays. The dark comes back. You won't like who lives there. Keene kept her hand at her side. Maybe, she said, or maybe the dark stops being a theater. Rachel closed the ledger and set the pencil on top like a gavel. Don't touch the switch yet. She walked to the nearest projector and laid a palm on its housing, not like a threat, but like a benediction. They used these to fix what the town would see. But light doesn't just reveal, it chooses. Tonight we choose. Footsteps above again, different weight, different cadence. Then the staircase claimed one more body in descent. Agent tags flashed, jackets stenciled with letters that turn rooms into evidence. Keene didn't look away from the men on their knees. Downstairs, she called, and the first tactical pair appeared, hands sure, mouths closed. The scene didn't break, it widened. The men in the doorway were relieved of any notion of exit. Zip ties whispered. The projector fans did not care. Rachel Monroe, one agent said, not a question, not a greeting, only the legal naming of a person alive in front of him. You're safe now. Rachel's laugh didn't travel. Safe isn't the word, she said. Seen is. The digital screen on the new machine pulsed and switched itself without being told. A fresh frame crawled into shape. The warehouse from Part 7, the schematics over concrete, the word Avery circled with arrows. Then the perspective shifted, not the way an editor cuts, but the way a camera steps backward on legs. The room we were in peered into the room we had been, and the braid of then and now tugged taut. Keen understood before she admitted it. "You've been feeding back," she said to Rachel, looping the evidence into the broadcast, making the audience into witnesses by force. Rachel didn't apologize. "They made captivity a public act. We answer publicly." The first man finally spoke past his practiced quiet. "You think the town wants this?" "No," Rachel said. "That's the point." Keen didn't ask permission. She asked the only operational question left. "How do we end it without erasing it?" Rachel nodded toward the knife switch and then away from it. "Not with a cut, with a fade." Keen watched the projectors, watched the way the basement heat gathered under the housings and lifted into the ceiling joists like summer storm. A fade meant reducing current, not slamming it. A fade meant an ending you could watch arrive. She crouched at the bus, traced the leads, found the rheostat the builders had left for lamp tests, its knurled knob hiding behind conduit. It bore no label, only a scratch like a crescent moon. She thumbed it, and the white on the wall softened by degrees until the edges of the painted screen showed themselves as paint, until the frame looked less like a command and more like a photograph left too long in the sun. "Hold," she told the techs crowding the stair. "No pulls. We're not killing the reel, we're landing it." The captive men squinted in the gentler light and somehow looked simply human. Keen didn't honor that with forgiveness. She honored it by writing their names in her head as if engraving. Not symbols, not covers, but persons who could stand in a courtroom where the bulbs were bright for a different reason. The timer wheel, forever wedged at 11:47, stuttered, caught, and for the first time since anyone could remember, ticked one tooth forward to 11:48. The thin mechanical sound was louder than an explosion. Out in the fields, porch lights stayed on, but the tripod's glow eased to amber and then to a softer gray that let stars take back their places. Radios hushed not because someone silenced them, but because the carrier waves stopped insisting. "Now," Rachel said, not to Keen, not to the room, but to the memory of a town that had stood in a circle of brightness for too many nights. "We speak." Keen gave the nod, and the tactical pair moved the men up the stairs, not roughly, not gently, with the exact pressure that says the world has weight again. Another team took photographs, the room, the ledger, the projectors, the switch, the rheostat with its crescent scratch, each frame a piece of a story that wouldn't need a projector to exist. "Cole," Keen said then, because the name hadn't been allowed to leave her chest in hours and wanted to prove it still could. "Where is he?" Rachel's gaze slid to the digital box, to the little blinking heart of it. She drew closer and touched the corner of the screen with one finger, like you'd test a window for rain. The machine obliged. The feed shifted to the circle of light in the warehouse, then to the blank chair, then to static, then to the field, then to a box of gray that wasn't a picture until a shape stepped into it and made it one. Cole. Not dead, not performatively alive, tired, fixed, eyes clear. He didn't speak to them. He spoke to whatever watched. "If you're still watching," he said on the loop that wasn't a loop anymore, "turn on your own light. Don't borrow ours." Rachel swallowed once and stood straighter in the kind of relief that doesn't feel good. He walked out of the frame when the frame wasn't needed, she said. He learned. Keen remembered the knife switch, remembered her own hand refusing the dramatic gesture. So do we. The town did what towns do, half believed immediately, half negotiated with belief, like a bill they didn't want to pay. The new sheriff arrived under too many lights and said the right words into microphones that had learned the virtue of silence. The state attorney called it a conspiracy and then called it something bigger when the basement was photographed at every angle, and the ledger's pages matched the tapes, and the tapes matched the dates, and the dates matched the missing. Reporters asked Rachel if she forgave. She didn't accept the verb. "I prefer repair," she said. They wrote forgive anyway because their fonts had fewer letters. In the shop, the projectors cooled to a sleep that didn't have to be watched. Keen signed chain of custody forms until ink ghosted her fingers. She left the rheostat where it was and taped a label above the knife switch in her fine, precise hand. "Do not cut dim." The techs gave her a look that said they preferred breakers. She gave them a look that said breakers create amnesia. Outside, morning bled into the edges of roofs, and Miller's Creek looked like a place where nothing had ever happened, which is the favorite look of places where something has. Keen walked Rachel up into the air and the ordinary noises of a town that knew its own soundtrack again. "Protective custody still stands," Keen said, "but we'll call it something else." Rachel nodded toward the east, where the fields kept their own counsel. "Call it witness protection and let the word mean what it says." But Keen almost smiled. "We can try." At the edge of the tape line, porch lights along Main Street flicked off one by one in a chain reaction that wasn't planned but looked like choreography. The diner's neon E fought twice and then held. In the distance, a church bell rang, the hour like hours mattered. The signal, those hops across windmills and scoreboards, did not return. At 11:47 that night, nothing special happened except the sound of crickets and the rustle of a paper being slid under a door at the sheriff's office. Keene found it at dawn, one Polaroid, underexposed, of the basement room with the lights at half and the ledger closed, and on its margin, written in small, careful block, the last caption the town would need for a while: "Scene ends, story does not." Keene pinned it to the board not as an omen, not as a dare, but as a reminder that a case is not a film and a community is not an audience unless it chooses to be. Then she turned from the board to the window, and in the glass she thought for a breath she saw a face that had spent too long in a circle of light. Cole, or her own reflection learning to leave the room. She didn't check. She let the reflection fade into daytime. By noon, paperwork had colonized every flat surface. By dusk, Rachel had a room with a lamp she could switch on and off for herself. And by midnight, somewhere far from any coordinate anyone had mapped, a man in a jacket with a name that never belonged to him set down a camera on a table and didn't pick it up. The bulb inside the viewfinder cooled with a sound like rain. Miller's Creek slept without a screen for the first time in years. Not because the past was over, but because the town had finally learned to look without being told where. And in the dark that wasn't a theater, dozens of small, ordinary lights turned on from inside the houses, from inside the hands that lived there, making a constellation no projector could simulate and no director could own. Morning didn't arrive so much as return, the way a tune you thought you'd forgotten finds your hands on a tabletop and starts tapping again. Miller's Creek woke under ordinary light. School buses yawning diesel, bakery doors swinging wide, the diner's neon E humming like a throat cleared before truth. The basement had been photographed, measured, logged, packed, the ledger copied, the projectors tagged, the knife switch taped with a warning that looked like mercy. The courthouse put on its weekday suit. Headlines cooled, whispers didn't. Agent Dana Keene wrote until her pen bled through forms and then switched to a pencil that broke and then to a keyboard that didn't. She moved like a metronome between evidence and air, between interviews and porch steps where people told her how they'd slept better, but not as well as before. Cold case cracked, production ring exposed, community in shock. The words behaved like news until you looked too long, then behaved like excuses. She kept them in the periphery and watched people instead. Rachel Monroe learned the shape of a room that belonged to her. She placed a lamp not for coverage but for comfort and found the angle where its circle meant witness, not stage. She spoke to a recorder sometimes, her own, not to narrate herself back into a story but to build a record that didn't require an audience. Dates, times, small rituals, coffee at 6:20, a slow walk at 9 o'clock, a window cracked for the sound of trees. She didn't forgive the county. She didn't sentence it either. She gave it chores. Open the archives, repair the wires, teach the children how to recognize a camera that eats. The arrests went slow because slow is how you keep them. Each man was a room of his own, grudges nailed to studs, alibis hung like family photos, silences plastered and painted. Some confessed to pieces because pieces sound less like guilt. Some demanded lawyers who negotiated verbs. Some had the serenity of the righteous until a photo was placed on the metal table and the bulb above found their eyes. Continuity, Keene wrote in her notes like a curse. Cover, composite. The court called it conspiracy. The town, still learning, called it what Rachel had first, production. Someone asked why it took years. Keene answered because machines were built and rituals were taught, and nobody dismantles a system by yanking one wire. Someone asked where Avery went. Keene said Avery was a story used to make other stories possible. Someone asked if Cole was alive. She said yes, the way you say sunrise. Not a guarantee, a fact that keeps remaking itself. Because Cole Harlan hadn't vanished. He had stepped sideways into a life without applause. A postcard with no return address arrived at Keene's desk under a stack of subpoenas. It carried a grainy photo of a water tower that wasn't local, and a short line in block letters the town would have recognized as a caption if the town had been invited to read it. Stop buying tickets. On the back, a thumbprint. Not official, human. Keene didn't catalog it. She pinned the card inside her notebook and let it hold its place. Trials came like seasons. The county shed its summer and stood in a gray-lit fall that believed in schedules. The courtroom lights were bright and boring, which is how light ought to be when it stops pretending to be a weapon. The first defendant learned the weight of a transcript bearing his words from 20 years ago, the way a joke about sets and shoots sounds when the room's walls are made of stone. The second learned that maintenance logs tell on you. The third learned the particular pitch of a town's collective attention when it decides, at last, to be a jury not just of 12, but of everybody. Rachel took the stand once, not to restage a night, but to describe a plan. She spoke without the cadence of victims you've heard on shows built to echo. She spoke like a mechanic lays out tools, each with a purpose, each placed where a hand can reach it. They needed light because light flatters itself, she said, and somewhere a reporter finally put down his camera. The judge didn't admonish the room to be quiet because the room had already learned. Keene sat on the aisle near the back where exits are visible and exits are metaphors. She felt the town pivot a degree, then another, as if a great lens were unthreading from a mount. She felt it again at the high school 1 week later, in a gym full of folding chairs where the new sheriff stood under reasonable bulbs and said the kind of things you can only say once. We will inventory every camera in every public building. We will audit access logs quarterly. We will mandate third-party custody for evidence that touches us. We will teach our kids what a narrative is and who gets to hold it. We will retire the phrase no comment unless silence protects the living. A science teacher stood and asked if the porch light ritual should end. Half the room wanted to keep them on forever. Half wanted darkness back like a right. Rachel, in the second row, raised a hand she didn't need to raise anymore. Lights on if you're welcoming someone in, she said. Off if you're hiding. The rest is superstition. The town wrote that on the wall by the gym door and misspelled superstition and refused to fix it because the error felt human. In the shop's basement, now a crime scene with a lock, the projectors cooled under labels and dust. The rheostat stayed where Keene had left it, set halfway, proof that endings can be graduated. A museum in a larger town asked to take the machines. The county refused. Not artifacts, the new sheriff said. Instruments. The board voted to keep them boxed in the courthouse vault with access for education, not spectacle. A field trip would come someday. A teacher would explain how a timer wheel sticks. A student would ask why anyone wanted to film pain. Another would say so they could sell it. A third would say so they could pretend to be saints. The teacher would say all three can be true. Rumors chased themselves until they tripped and slept. Someone swore Cole had been seen at the edge of town, watching a hardware store replace its fluorescent tubes with warm LEDs, hands in his pockets, hat low, the ghost of a smile when a boy held the door for an old man who wasn't acting. Someone else swore they heard a tape recorder click off in the church vestibule and felt the relief a room feels when it realizes nothing is listening but the room. The gas station finally came down. A crew with no nostalgia wrapped chains around its ribs and pulled. Dust rose. A small crowd watched without cheers or tears, then, without instruction, stooped to carry away the broken sign letters one by one until only the posts and the rectangle of earth remained. A teenager planted wild sunflowers there as a school project. They took, and then in late summer exploded into yellow the newspapers called defiant. They were not defiant, they were plants. Fall slipped into winter. Porch lights learned to belong to porches again. A church set a table out front with paper and pens beneath a sign. Write what you remember, not what you've been told. The pages filled with small things, names of waitresses, the smell of a feed store, the color of sky before a hailstorm, the rumor that a math teacher played bass in a band in the 70s. The table moved to the library, then the diner, then the courthouse. A retired lineman wrote how county power skips in storms and how you can hear it in your fillings. A girl wrote that the gym floor creaks under the third bleacher from the left. A man wrote he had been wrong about a neighbor for 15 years and wanted to pay interest. Some pages crumpled under the weight of what they tried to hold. Others balanced it like waitresses balance plates. Keene drove the counties at night sometimes and turned the radio off and listened to the world without carriers. She made a ritual of passing the windmills that used to hop signal and hearing nothing but wind. She stopped once at the field where the tripod had lived and found only ruts and a wrapper and the memory of a screen. She stood in the quiet and filed a report no one asked for in the only place that mattered, her chest. Signal discontinued, vigilance ongoing, audience reduced, witnesses increased. In March, the date rolled back around the way dates do when they think they're in charge. 03:14. The town felt it without checking a calendar. The diner put a pie in the window with a sign that said, "For Rachel," and crossed out the "for" and wrote "from." The school held a small assembly not for tragedy but for media literacy, which is quieter and saves more lives. The courthouse flew a flag at half not for mourning but for room under repair. The new sheriff unlocked the vault, stared at the boxed machines, and locked the door again. He didn't speak. He dimmed the hallway lights to half and left them that way for the day. At dusk, a vigil without candles gathered where the station had been. No cameras. People stood and didn't perform. A child asked what they were waiting for. Rachel, who came with a coat and left with two because people are like that now, answered without looking up, "We're not waiting. We're staying." The child nodded as if that solved math. When night settled its proper weight, porch lights came on and off at random, as houses do when people walk rooms. No secret signal, no countdown. At 11:47 p.m., the field to the east stayed dark and true. Somewhere far away, a man set down his hat and stopped looking at clocks. Somewhere closer, Keene closed a case file without pretending that paper can bury anything, and put the file on a shelf labeled "Open by Design," and felt the way a room breathes when you crack a window. Somewhere at the exact center of town, which shifts nightly depending on who needs it most, a lamp burned on a kitchen table, and the person under it wrote another line on another page about a small thing that would not make TV but made the day. And at an hour no one timed, a letter slid under the door at the sheriff's office. Plain envelope, no stamp, no name. Inside, a single photo, underexposed, of a porch at night with 3 chairs and no people, and the porch light off, and above the photo, in small, careful block, one caption that was not a dare, not a taunt, not a riddle, just a sentence that fit the town like a shirt it finally grew into. Scene closed. Witnesses stay. Keene didn't frame it. She pinned it at the bottom right of the board, where you put the truth you don't want to forget because it isn't loud. Rachel saw it the next morning and didn't touch it. The new sheriff read it aloud and didn't clear his throat. The town did what towns do when they survive their own myth. It learned to clap without a stage. The sun rose exactly as if it had always planned to. The streets filled with errands and promises and the soft noise of commerce that isn't trying to be a soundtrack. And somewhere out in the open air, far from basements and sets, you could hear a sound so ordinary it felt like mercy. Chairs being pulled across a porch you could visit without needing a ticket. A kettle coming to a boil. A screen door not slamming, just closing.